Start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm here, Spin, and I'm joined by my co-host Rex. And Rex, I wish you a happy belated Mother's Day. 'Cause I'll do my best to keep the positives, to keep the vibes
Thank
positive
you.
this week. So yeah.
Yeah,
Anyways,
me too.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll do my best too.
Um,
Yeah, title blown, but second place isn't bad.
hmm
So
I know we're gonna. Well, I've got a few comments to maybe share with you. So I do think I don't think it's necessarily all lost, and I don't think it's necessarily all doom and gloom. But I also want to think there was maybe a turning point, which I will maybe get to. But with that said, we'll start with what we normally do, which is a story of the week, and I'll maybe just switch it up because we have talked a little U.S. soccer on the podcast and a few of these episodes, and we got some big news yesterday, which could be turn out to be absolute monsters news, considering we are hosting the
yeah,
tournament in 2016, and it looks like we might have our main feature striker. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
yeah, great news coming out yesterday actually that Florian Balogun has decided to represent the U.S. national team. He could have gone England or U.S. We thought he might choose us because he's been very vocal on Twitter about USA games, especially during the World Cup. But he
Hmm.
officially announced that he will be representing the United States, which is huge because I mean, if you've been listening to the show, you know that he is playing in France with Reims and is just lighting up the goal scoring charts there. He was the Golden Boot leader for a little bit. I don't think he is anymore, but so he's going to be a proper, legit striker. We hope, and he's still very young. So really good news. It looks like one of those positions that we were worried about, striker. You can kind of put a check mark, and it looks like maybe that position is solved for the next couple years, hopefully.
Yeah, and the main thing is the production. It's not just that he's also technically an Arsenal player, as well, but it's that he is on loan and
Yeah.
he's not just he doesn't just have like double digits here and there. I think he's over 20. In the French league, or like you said, close to it. When you said he was close to being the Golden Boot leader, that was like a month ago when I last checked. It wasn't like that was sometime in just December. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I
this
haven't
is
checked in a while, but yeah, it was about a month
this
ago.
has been kind of a thing that the team has been doing. It's maybe started with Serginho Dest, and we've just kind of we've gotten Yunus Musa as well, and just kind of it's continued. It started under Berhalter, so we can give him a little bit credit for that, but it's continued. Well, without Berhalter, and you look at all of a sudden how we can possibly line up going forward. This really is exciting, and I think I saw that he can maybe feature for our next Nations League game coming up next month. So,
Ooh,
so we'll
that'd be
see
great.
if that'll happen. It'll be understandable if he's given a rest instead, but we'll see. And then the other thing to say is Champions League did happen last week with Man City and Real Madrid drawing 1-0, and then well, the other the other game wasn't necessarily nearly as intriguing. It was the Italian derby between the Milan derby. And Inter Milan kind of handled AC. Rafael Leao wasn't really able
Yeah.
to go. He didn't look fit yesterday. He was able to play yesterday. But Inter will be whoever will be one of the teams that's in the final. And it is kind of funny how no, this entire the last few years, Inter has kind of been it's kind of just been there. They won Europa, or at least they made a final or the Europa final a few years back. It started with maybe Antonio Conte. This is maybe I think his kind of team. It seems like the coach that Inzaghi has inherited has kind of stuck with the same kind of formation, same kind of formula, and it just seems he's maybe switched Jacko and Lukaku because it still seems he's playing with two strikers, still playing with a back three. And it'll be this is maybe intriguing. You at least look at the names, and this doesn't necessarily seem it would be either Real Madrid or City would necessarily overmatch them at least in I guess player profile. But we'll see. Because a lot of people I saw online were thinking that whoever wins today, that probably will be the heavy favorite, and they're probably right.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Right, and then we'll move on to what happened in the EPL. I mean, first, we will kind of get on to, I guess, what happened with Man City and Everton because while not there wasn't really a whole lot of intrigue in this game. I think one of the things that NBC was running with even before the Arsenal game started was they were wondering if Arsenal were players were following or I think some of the reporting said the fans were certainly were paying attention. And so I don't necessarily know if that went into the mindset. It was like, oh, this is kind of a letdown, where maybe that kind
Yeah.
of factored in. I can't say, but we will start with Man City and Everton because Man City go on to win 3-0. Goals from Gundogan, Holland, and then Gundogan with a ridiculous free kick. Though I think Pickford kind of screwed up on this here. But I.
Same.
I really have a take that I don't necessarily think it was as lopsided as the score result showed. I didn't think City were actually
Yeah.
that good. Now they were able to rest a lot of players, which I think will also be a story because no Kevin De Bruyne, no John Stones, no Jack Grealish, and Arsenal didn't have that luxury, to rest guys like that down the stretch, and I think that maybe has factored in a little bit in this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Gundogan, another masterclass from him, and that
Yep.
free kick, he hit it, hit it soft, but he just hit it with so much spin and curve. I mean, as soon as it beat the wall, I was like, that's a goal. But yeah, I mean, maybe Pickford could have had, could have gotten closer to it, might have been able to keep it out, because it was hit soft,
Pickford
but
thought
that spin on
there
it
was no
was,
way he
oof.
was getting over the wall and getting in, getting up and over from that distance because you actually see him start to move the other way. Maybe he thought Mahrez was going to take the kick. Um,
Mm,
because even the announcers were like, it's from that that weird distance where it's hard to get it's hard to get up and over
yeah,
essentially, and
it's too close. Yeah.
he did it with ease. Um, and really, Man City almost did nothing for the first 30 minutes of the game, and then Gundogan had this insane first goal that really did kind of open everything up. And so
This one was unbelievable too. I mean, this one was crazy.
and this is 2 back-to-back games where Gundogan really has saved Pep and Man City. It hasn't been Haaland, hasn't been De Bruyne, it's been Gundogan. And
Yeah.
we're gonna get to him because he's a bit of an unsung hero. I mean, I've spoken
Mhm.
his praises in a number of
Oh
these
yeah.
shows. I'll do it again
We always call
because
him underrated for sure.
yeah, because Haaland this, Pep that, and it's 2 games in a row that he's been able to do this. And really, last week versus Real Madrid, it was Kevin De Bruyne's individual brilliance. Everyone can talk about how great Pep is and how great City play. And sometimes, you've kind of mentioned this before that sometimes Pep's teams can be almost robotic, and it just takes someone being individually great to unlock something, and we've seen that for the last 2 weeks with two really it's not fair that City have this two of the best midfielders in an entire generation that play on the same team,
Yep. It's
and
ridiculous.
and
And you
so
could rest De Bruyne too and
yeah.
have gone to get in. It's incredible.
And I mean, Man City did go with a bit of a different lineup. I mean, we saw Kyle Walker back, so that's why you were able to rest John Stones. And Akanji has just been able to fill in at left back, which just that has been an insane buy because I think they only got him for 15 million. And they've lost Ake. Ake, I think, was before even this. I thought he was left back of the year. Maybe Sinchenko has given a shout, but Akanji has stepped in a number of these games. He did a really good job on Arsenal as well, and he was fantastic in this game as
Yeah.
well. And then no Jack Grealish, that's okay. Phil Foden was able to play, and Holland was able to get his goal, and but he wasn't necessarily. I think he only had like 2 touches before that goal. Um, Everton actually, I thought, did start off well. To be fair to them, it was just once you give up the first,
Yeah.
it's hard to regroup, and then before you get to halftime, it was 2-0, and then either by necessity or by just by caution, you saw Dyche wave the white flag because he took Calvert Lewin off at halftime.
Yeah, and you're right about the game being, closer than the scoreline suggests, because Everton almost got the first goal in the game, and who knows what would have happened then.
Yep.
But instead they miss, and then Gundogan scores like a few minutes later, and then your game plan is kind of ruined, and Dyche has decisions to make. Do we just manage the scoreline? Do we still try to go for it and get something out of the game? So yeah, it could have been a closer game if Everton had scored that first goal. Who knows what would have happened?
And Gunnigan didn't just get the first goal; he also set up the goal for Holland to get the second one because it was his cross and it was hit absolutely perfectly. And the only thing I can think of here is I don't really understand why Yerry Mina isn't almost, skin tight on Holland because he seems like he's the only one with the size to have maybe been able to do something here. Tarkovsky has no chance. He even tries to jump and he gets nowhere near it. Holland already is 6'4" and he's got really good aerial ability as well. I mean, he maybe is 7 feet in the air when he heads us in. He's quite high up. So it was poor a little bit on Everton there. It was also poor, I thought, by James Garner. James Garner, I think, was lazy because it seemed like everyone was man marked, except for he's everyone is man marked except for Gunnigan. And so what happens is City go long, and Patterson wins the header over Phil Foden. But Gunnigan is then able to run onto the ball unmarked because Garner isn't prepared for that. Everyone else has a man except for him. It's a little
Mhm.
harsh, but I think that kind of hurts. And then the other aspect was Tarkowski and Holgate had absolutely no chance when it was Holland able to get up over them. And so I did think it was a decent first half. You saw what Everton were trying to do. You saw Decore get on the turn with a few runs. I actually thought Kyle Walker had a couple big recovery runs to maybe stop some transition moments. It wasn't necessarily,
Yeah.
and Calvert Lewin wasn't necessarily impact. He didn't. I don't think he had necessarily a couple shots, but what he was doing is he was drawing people away from him. So Everton were able to win the ball back a little bit, and they were able to break. Iwobi had a couple really good runs as well, and
He
so
did, yeah.
yeah. It was you understood the formula that they were trying to do, and just uh, Kyle Walker or Kanji were really good at being able to kind of cut out the danger, because Everton did only have your 3 attempts on goal the whole game. I mean, 37% possession. You understand that. City only had 9 shots and 4 on target. And then again, after they got especially after they got the second goal, they didn't really have to do much. Because
Yeah.
City's XG was only point 0.7, and yeah, the Holland goal I think was a high XG, but the Gunnigan one absolutely wasn't, and neither was the free kick. So I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
And just just to speak about Gunnigan, I've raved about him before, as I've mentioned, and the reason why he's special is and unique is he can be a pivot six when you need him. He can play in a deep position. He can be an advanced eight when you need him to be, and as we see here, he can be a nine when you need him to be. He makes such clever runs in the box. And regardless of his size, he's just really good at taking balls down. Either with his touch, he can head balls in when you need him as well. I mean, he's always moving and making clever timed runs into the box. He scores goals. As we saw last week, he scores goals from outside the box as well. And
Mhm.
just the main thing is him being able to play a deeper role means he can dictate the game as well. He can be someone that Rodri he can be next to Rodri. When the City having to build up, when City are trying to press him, and he can be an outlet when City are under pressure. To
Mhm.
advance, he's always good at kind of advancing the ball upfield. He's got good ball retention as well. So he makes City tick in so many games. It's not fair that Pep has him, and then you have Kevin De Bruyne, who's like the best I guess final ball deliverer that maybe the league has even seen. And then
Yeah.
all they have then is a guy that's on 38 goals, 50 goals for the year in Holland.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
when you put all of this together, Arsenal fans are going to feel like, oh man, we've blown this. The season's a letdown. You were going against almost a created team in that respect. So to at least be able to push them this far is something to keep in the back of minds. I know no one wants to hear that. Everyone wants to hear. Uh, I saw someone. It might have been on NBC when they said, "Show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser." I don't think that's the right mindset. I do think there's perspective here.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that, and we've kind of been saying all year. I mean, City is just a different team. They just like you said, they have so much more depth. I mean, I think a lot of that too is they want to win the Champions League, and I think they realize we got to have more depth. And it's something really Arsenal's going to have to do next year, being in the Champions League themselves. They're going to
Yes.
have to
Yep.
clear out some of those players, and they're going to have to improve the depth. And it kind of showed this year too, because injuries happened for Arsenal, and they weren't really able to necessarily fill them with quality players. Whereas things happen with City. and people don't even get hurt because they're able to rest like Kevin De Bruyne. They don't even have to play him, and they can have Gundogan instead. So Arsenal need some of that too. I mean, at the end of the year, I mean, at the beginning of the season, I mean, we didn't think we'd be here near the end in second place. I mean, the goal was
The
just to
goal is
get top
Champions
four.
League.
So
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so yeah, like you said, a little bit of perspective. It sucks, but I think after a couple weeks or whatever, I think the Arsenal fans will kind of be like, okay, it was a good season. Now let's bring in some reinforcements, strengthen up, and maybe we can give it a proper go next year.
Because Pep's able to rest Kevin De Bruyne, John Stones, Jack Grealish, Bernardo Silva, and just kind of to pick on one player for Arsenal who didn't. I just feel he didn't have an injury per se, but I think he was mentally fatigued, and he looked maybe just physically fatigued in Saka. I don't remember him necessarily getting a rest, and I don't really remember him having necessarily a good game since March. Um,
Yeah, yeah, he needs he needs someone to come in and be able to give him like a rest every once in a while. That's another issue is they don't really have a right winger. I mean, maybe Reece Nelson, but so that's something they're gonna have to strengthen in the summer too.
And so one thing I wanted to kind of float with you is I saw a lot of talk on this online, that Arsenal had bottled this, and I see the City able to rest these kind of players and win a game comfortably away from home. And my kind of thought, I kind of tweeted about this as well, is the only one bottling a title would have been Man City if they hadn't have won this. They won the league 3 years in a
Mhm.
row and just brought in a 40 goal scoring striker that no center back in the world can handle. Three of the best midfielders in a generation play on the same club and are playing at their peak. To supply him and give him look after look. And then I look at Arsenal's top goal scorer, and it's a midfielder with 15 goals in Odegaard. By comparison,
Yeah,
Jesus had that
yeah.
injury, so that's not necessarily on him. But even since he's returned, I think he only has one goal. I think he scored versus Chelsea. So maybe it is being a little easy, but I don't see this as Arsenal bottling anything. I see it as an amazing accomplishment, which I kind of mentioned as well, especially for a team without a true number nine.
Mm.
Usually when teams win a title, and I think I brought this up in December. Usually they have a 20 goal scoring either striker or player. Liverpool have had Mo Salah for all these years. Um, and then, a team with Rob Holding had to play important games, and then you look at what City were able to play instead, down the stretch. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a problem too. And yeah, the reason why, in my opinion, they didn't bottle it is because of those injuries. Like mainly Holding having to play for Saliba, massive drop in quality
100%.
there, and
We
it
saw
immediately you could tell.
we saw that affect Party as well. Party looked a different player
Yeah,
once Saliba wasn't
yeah,
involved.
that's true.
I
Yeah,
because I can't explain it. I wasn't the only one that was praising Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey was having a fantastic season until the last month of the year, and that's the only thing I can go to other than
yeah,
he got a change in attitude. I can't explain it because even when he was playing, when he came on versus Brighton, I didn't think he necessarily looked good as well, and he just first West Ham versus in a number of those games. Oh, that's not good.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. He hasn't.
I mean, there was a reason why Arteta was playing Jorginho, and that was why
Mhm.
he had to.
Yeah, and maybe this is more, Partey being tired towards the end of the year too, and
Could be, yeah,
you
that
can't
could be.
really rest him that much. I mean, now that they got Jorginho, they kind of can, but it's a different situation from what Pep has, where like he can really the whole year kind of manage Kevin De Bruyne and manage his minutes. Arteta wasn't necessarily able to really do that at times, so maybe it's catching up to him, and he's feeling a little leggy, a little jaded because he certainly looks a little tired. So
And we'll get to Arsenal, next. I do think you guys severely missed Zinchenko when versus Brighton, which we'll get to. But just to keep the focus on Man City, one thing I'm going to say, maybe my own personal mea culpa is because I was definitely wrong about this. I thought Pep was going to regret selling Jesus, Zinchenko, and Sterling to rival clubs. And maybe this could still show up to Real Madrid because it's still the one place in the team that I do think they're weak. They don't have someone with 1v1 ability and pace on the wing. I thought it was fitting that Vinicius Jr. scored the goal he did versus Man City last week because City don't have that kind of player. But so far, it hasn't deterred them in the league. So there's some of that on my end. But another thing too is I've just praised Kevin De Bruyne again. Again, obviously Holland's going to get headlines. Really, the reason City are in this position to win another title, maybe win a triple. because they're still alive in FA Cup, still alive in Champions League, is Pep's found a way to fix this defense. Because they're now even with Newcastle, I think, on goals conceded. So first in the league, they have another clean sheet here, and I feel like in the middle of the season we were talking about how it looked like they were vulnerable. Pep was trying this weird, three at the back. He was trying Rico Lewis in midfield, and in February it wasn't working. And
Yeah,
so maybe that Akanji and Ake coming into the team a little bit more has changed that because in one of two things have happened that's coincided with this. He shipped Cancelo out and he started playing not really full. He didn't start. He started not playing with fullbacks essentially.
yeah,
And they've been better at recovery and been better at limiting teams being able to counter on them. Not
yeah.
excluding the Vinicius goal versus Real Madrid.
The interesting thing too, though, is like it just seems like every year towards the end of the season, Pep and City just really start picking up pace. They kind of have some roadblocks and some bumps in the beginning of the season, the last couple of years that they kind of have to smooth out. But then they get that figured out, and the second half of the season, they are just flying. And maybe this year too, that will coincide with maybe them finally winning the Champions League because they're one of the hottest teams right now in Europe in general. So
Yep.
it's something that they always seem to pick up the pace when it really matters most. Arsenal, the last two seasons, have kind of dropped off the pace when it matters most.
They're as healthy as I can remember. And they've been able to rest Kevin De Bruyne in some of these games, because they brought in
Oh
someone
yeah,
like Alvarez, who's been able to help them out. We helped them out versus Fulham. They have John Stones back, where they didn't have him last season. He got hurt, I think, in the first leg versus Real Madrid. So they have him back. They have Ruben Diaz. They have Laporte. They're missing Ake. That really is it. They have Rodri. They have everyone that's been a key focal point to their success. So I think that's been the main reason for that. And
absolutely.
um, one thing to maybe say is it isn't necessarily all over. Their run of games isn't necessarily that great. Now, people are going to look at Chelsea side that think City will have their way with them. But when they played in February, it was a 1-0 game. I think even the keeper had a mess up. So that was at least competitive. Chelsea did just hire Pochettino, which we'll get to. So maybe there'll be a manager bump. And maybe in a romantic sense, Jesus wasn't able to punish Pep, but maybe Sterling can. Sterling looked really good on the weekend. So if somehow City can prevent or Chelsea can prevent City from winning that game, Man City do just need one win. One win gets them to 88 points, which Arsenal can't catch up. So
Right.
it'll take just one win out of these three games. But then after that, it is Brighton. That at least will give them a go. And then the final game is Brentford. So if they can get to the final game, it is away at Brentford Stadium. Brentford have been a tough team to play at home, so there's still a reason for hope. I'll say. Obviously, Arsenal have to take care of their business as well. But you could, if you were an Arsenal fan, you could have worse 3 games where a team would have to go through. So
True. Yeah, and Arsenal could with a couple more points could equal their best point total ever the year of the Invincibles. So maybe that's something too they can kind of aim for if City does wrap this thing up early. But I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, it just seems like two teams kind of going in the opposite directions right now when it matters most. And we mentioned like injuries for Arsenal is a huge part of that. So yeah, they need more depth. It'll be a fun summer for Arsenal for sure. With just opening up to all those potential players that would have avoided going there because they weren't in the Champions League a couple years running. So we'll see
yeah.
if that opens them up to higher quality players and maybe more money coming in. Who knows?
Yeah, and when we get to Arsenal, which we're about to do, you look at the profiles for most of the team, and you look at you can say they're real set for this not to just be a 1 year thing. Though there is one area where you go, because Jorginho, Partey, and think Xhaka are all over 30, or at least on that other side of 30. So that is where they probably need to look at, which I think
Yeah.
they are linked to a couple of names
Yeah.
there. So that which would make sense. I think I even saw that Shaka is maybe on his way out. Even
Yeah.
like so, there there's
Yeah. I saw
there's
that too.
there's one already there. And then to just to touch on Everton, dice 4-5-1 kind of shape. It just doesn't work without Calvin Lewin. We saw Maupay come in, and they had no way to advance the ball upfield or any of that. And I just thought they were doing it because, hey, this is a brittle guy. Let's try to rest him. And no, it's come out that he had tightness in his groin, which
Mhm.
is that's scary. If I'm an Everton fan, hearing that because you need this guy to be able to fire versus Wolves or Bournemouth, because
Yeah.
I don't think they're necessarily out of this yet. One
Yeah,
win
no.
1 win gets them to
Mhm.
35. 35 might not. I think 35 would be safe, but they can't go into these with draws. We can't go in this with a mindset that they don't have to show up.
Yeah,
You know,
because they're only 1 point
Bournemouth
clear.
just kind of got embarrassed a little bit, and there's been a lot of talks about them going to the beach. Maybe they'll want to try to prove something. And Wolves didn't necessarily have the best of games this past weekend as well. It was only 2-0 versus Man United, but they really didn't show up. So, but Everton still need to get some points here. So,
Absolutely, yeah, everything's still very much in danger for them.
and without Calvert Lewin, I would worry. But we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
they might just need to cut their losses this summer if they're still in the Prem and just get rid of them and bring someone else in because he's just injured too much. You can't just be like every year, "Oh, we did bad because Calvert-Lewin's hurt." Eventually you're gonna have to get rid of him and get someone healthy.
At least some find some way to improve
Mhm.
in that park because you can't I think it's just LSMs obviously it's not gonna be Mapai,
Yeah,
so
no.
you've got to yeah that's gonna be something that they have to work on most definitely if they
Yeah.
stay up, um,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah,
so
it's a big problem.
Sorry, Rex. We'll move on to Arsenal and Brighton. This one does end 3-0, though it wasn't really that kind of game. I think Dennis Undev's goal came in like the 89th minute. But the first goal really was the crushing one in Senso. 1-0 it happened early in the in the second half. And then Arsenal just weren't able to regroup after that, even though they had the whole really the whole second half to respond. But we'll get to this. I think there is a reason, and I also think we'll see what your thoughts on this. I think Arteta maybe made a mistake on the lineup or roster decisions, but we'll get to. The Zinchenko
Mhm.
one kind of forced his hand, but there was another one. There was maybe an omission that I think was an issue. But Let's just start here. I mean, what were your first takeaways, or what do you think went wrong?
Oh, geez. Well, I like the lineup for the most part. I mean, maybe Partey, maybe Trossard could have been in there. But the lineup wasn't terrible. Zinchenko is out, obviously. I wanted a little bit more out of Tierney. I love Tierney, and he's a solid defensive fullback, but I just wanted a little bit more out of him. A little bit more attacking. But I thought Brighton were just brilliant. I think they were angry about getting blown out to Everton the week before, and I think they kind of took all that anger out on Arsenal, and it was just they were brilliant. And Cizo's a good young player. Stupinan is another good young player that was brilliant.
He was.
Matoma, Ferguson got to start. Caicedo was playing in a new spot, so they were just really, really impressive. And it was kind of one of those games from the beginning. It kind of just looked like Arsenal just weren't quite up to what we're used to seeing with Arteta. They're pressing high in the beginning. They're doing nice slick combo passing. You could just kind of tell they were a little off on this day, just from the start. And it could be down to feeling leggy or injuries. We had Jorginho was in, so Partey was out. Zinchenko it was out, and then still no Saliba. So it's little things like that that just kind of killed the momentum in the team the last couple weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I do think the injuries were a big story, and not just Zinchenko. Once Martinelli had to go off,
Mhm.
that's been the core of Arsenal's left side in possession. I think you saw Xhaka being a different player with that change because Trossard did not offer what Martinelli was able to do. Martinelli, isn't just a wing threat. He's unpressable, and he really he looks to try to make back shoulder runs all the time. And with Trossard not necessarily being able to offer that, that allowed Casado to almost not have to play a position. To be honest, he was
Mhm.
right back. He was still in midfield for most of this
Yeah.
game, and Casado had an amazing game. So that really did hurt you there. Uh,
Mhm.
The thing that I want to touch on is I went back and watched the highlights of the 4-2 game back in December. Um, when Arsenal had that early, it was basically they went off on fire. It was like a 3-0 lead in the first half, and then
Mhm.
Brighton came back a little bit. Uh, the main thing that I looked at was Jesus didn't play that game. It was Nketiah. And Nketiah is
Right.
actually responsible for maybe the first goal, or maybe even because he even scores, so he's responsible for at least 2 of these goals. And what he's doing is he's always in the box. He's always kind of in the area where I thought Jesus, way too often was playing, looking for pockets. He was looking to try to be almost like a number 10. And the times when he did get the ball, he was quickly trying to get it out wide to someone. When someone get and say Trussard or whoever gets it out wide, they're looking to cross the ball, and who are they going to cross it to? Because Jesus isn't trying to be in the box and isn't really a threat. So I thought that was an issue. There was also a couple times when he did get the ball in the box, I thought he was hesitant to shoot. Another
Mhm.
thing that happened was in the first few minutes, it looked like Odegaard had a chance to shoot, and for some reason pulled up, and wasn't able to get the shot off. So I do think nerves played a little role into this. We'll maybe
Yeah.
get to that. But I do think you're right to
Yeah.
touch on as Arsenal were a little off, Brighton were brilliant. And because I can't you look at the stats, I can't remember a team. City didn't do this. City beat Arsenal comfortably, score-wise, but no team has been able to play Arsenal off the park at the Emirates this entire season. And you look at the possession and the stats, and Arsenal were second best in almost every category.
Yeah. Yeah, they really were. The only thing they really were better at is they had 2 more shots, but they had 4 less on target, so that's not that great. And they had 3 more corners, and that's about it. Even pass accuracy was much lower, 7 points lower than Brighton, which you usually see Arsenal passing in the 80s, and they were at 76%. So yeah, just not. I'm trying to. I don't know. I was just asking the question like in my head during the game: is this an Arsenal thing, or is this just Brighton? We're just really mad about getting crushed by Everton, and we're just a completely different Brighton team.
I
Because
think
that's what I was kind of thinking going in. Honestly, I was thinking they're going to be mad. They're going to give us everything they got.
I think you're right to touch on that. Because one thing I actually have this down for a note to remember is um De Zerbi learned, I think, from his mistake by Everton. He played Casado at right back as opposed to playing Basco Gross. He's able to play Basco Gross back in the midfield. He was able to play with Billy Gilmore, and they were able to play Alexis McAllister as that cam role, and this worked brilliantly. Basically, that's the reason why Arsenal. It seemed never. It seemed that Arsenal were outnumbered in every part of the pitch. And another thing that was an issue was anytime Arsenal were trying to press high, as you said, Will Still was taking gamble after gamble, and sometimes there was one time when he almost passed it right to Shaka, which would have been an open goal.
Yeah,
But even because he was able to get it past Shaka, one ball over the top, and Enciso had a shot that forced Ramsdale to save it. A lot of this came from Brighton just being really brave at trying to look to pass the ball forward, and it started with the
oh
goalkeeper.
yeah. Mhm.
And just another thing too was just any McAllister, Casado, Gross, Gilmore, whoever, just were really good at doing triangles and one-touch passing and just be able to just get away from Arsenal pressing them. And so often, it seemed when they were able to bypass Arsenal's pressure, you looked up and it was either Mitoma or it was Enciso versus 1v1 versus a center back or versus a fullback, and neither of Arsenal's players wanted to or did well there, especially Ben White. Ben White did not want to face not does not want to see Matoma ever again. So I
Yeah,
think that was kind of an issue too. But another thing we're saying is Sully Marsh got hurt versus Everton. I don't think Sully Marsh gets in the position that Enciso was in for that goal. So
mhm.
that hurts you out as well because that Enciso was brilliant in this game as well.
He was. Yeah, he was good. And Colwell and Dunk, two great passers with the ball for center
100%.
backs. And
Yeah.
yeah, well, it was dangerous. But they're great to watch with the ball. It's always fun to watch like really good passers at center back.
To just kind of get started with the game, it was a real physical start. Odegaard had a head injury from someone kicking the ball at him, and then the Matoma had a bit of a knock after Martinelli kind of clattered into him a little bit, and this kind of ended up backfiring on him because it really does look like Casado went into this with revenge on his mind. I think you even saw there's a clip of him and Matoma kind of doing a hand slap, like I got your back a little bit, and
Mhm.
that ended up taking Martinelli out of the game, and that really did change the entire complexity of the game. I thought because that allowed Casado after once Trossard came on, they didn't respect Trossard being on the wing at all, and that allowed Casado to almost not play a position. I thought.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and it really stinks because I mean, I thought honestly, I thought maybe Trossard playing against his former team when he came in, I thought he would bring a little bit of something, but yeah, he kind of got shut down, and it wasn't good, Ben. It was not good.
And that's what's kind of funny. When you go back to that 4-2 game, they played Trossard. They started him. I think Trossard
Mhm.
was it wasn't Evan Ferguson. In fact, the reason why that game changed in the second half was they De Zerbi brought on Evan Ferguson, and Evan Ferguson scored. I think it was the first time I'd ever seen that guy before. And then he had a couple goals for Everton, and I was like, oh, Evan Ferguson is a name I should remember.
Mhm.
And I think it was Matoma's, like, 2nd goal, in that game as well, and I was like, "Oh, maybe Matoma's a name we should remember." So,
Hell yeah.
that game was a big even though Brighton lost, because they were able to push Arsenal. I think Matoma even scored a 3rd goal, and it was chalked off because of, like, a kneecap offsides, so it would've made it 4-3, and they did that game without Alexis McAllister or Caicedo, I remember.
That's right. Yeah.
So in a weird way, even though Brighton lost that game, that was because they were able to push Arsenal at least, in that second half. That maybe gave them a certain number of amount of belief that hey, we maybe have something here, and then maybe that changed their season as well. But
Yeah, good point.
so we'll get to the first goal because you mentioned Levi Colwell and Dunk, and I think that's exactly right. I mean the because the I mentioned Billy Gilmore and Callister and Griss where we just collect it and find teammates. But another thing too is the skill of every Brighton player from center back to keeper is calm on the ball when they have it, and one of those is Levi Colwell, and so this goal comes from Colwell having a long ball over the top that's able to pick out Matoma, and he's able to run on the loose ball and take on Ben White 1v1. And Matoma does a really good job of Matoma just did not think Ben White could polish his boots. It seemed. So what he does is Ben White is scared. He's not necessarily getting to him, and he waits and draws Ben White kind of onto him, and then he plays Estupiñán making an overlap run. I mean, this is maybe a little harsh because it's a lot of ground for soccer to cover, but because no one really marks that Estupiñán run, he's able to get a free cross off. It's first blocked by Tierney, but Tierney heads it right back to Estupiñán. Tierney maybe could do better to head it out of bounds, or he could do a better job trying to head this somewhere else. But it's just kind of a reactionary header, unfortunately.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Maybe he could have gotten a little more distance on it, but yeah, it was a reaction, so it wasn't terrible. But yeah, you could pinpoint a better clear might have avoided that goal.
Because that's where the goal happened, because Estupiñán's able to get the ball
Yeah,
right back, and then he doesn't wait to try to collect it, he doesn't try to take a touch. He does the first time, he almost, like, volleys it, and he volleys it into the ground, so it's a weird bounce, and it falls to Enciso, who's completely unmarked because Jakub Kiwior, is on the ground. It looks like someone has stepped on his ankle,
yeah.
on the first cross, so there's just nothing but misfortune here for Arsenal. But sometimes when games are kind of close in the balance, that's what can tip it, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, definitely agree, and not really a foul on Kivior because it was just incidental, like someone stepped on him. So not no complaints for me for a foul really. I think Kivior went down kind of hoping he would get a foul and a foul would bail him out,
I
but
was wondering
it was
about
just
that.
incidental.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think he
be-
kind of said that, but
because well, he was on the ground after the goal, getting
Mhm.
medical treatment, and everyone was like, "You're gonna have to sub him off and bring maybe Holding on." And within the first minute after that, he does a fantastic run to close off Matoma sprinting. Ben White's absolutely nowhere. He does a really good job to actually. I think he wins the ball back. He beats Matoma in an outright sprint, and I was like, maybe Kiwar could play right back because he did a really good job there. And there's to show no sign of injury. So
yeah, 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 and he's been good. Maybe that will help Arteta. Maybe they only need like one more center back instead of two or whatever his plans were. Because Kivior has been good at least.
yes, yeah, and I remember him being brought in. Andrew kind of thought maybe 'cause he looked at his highlights and he was like, man, this guy can pass. He's really good on the ball.
Mhm.
Maybe the idea was to play him almost like a defensive midfielder. almost. So we'll see what the plans are for him. I agree with you. I don't necessarily think it's unfortunate what happens here because he is on the ground and that's where the goal is scored. But in these little cameos that he's had, he has impressed, and he's obviously been better than Holding. So
Oh, definitely.
yeah.
And he was a starter in all the games for Poland in the World Cup too,
Oh, I didn't know that.
at a
Okay,
very young
he
age. So,
is.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, there's a little bit of confidence there, I think, and I hopefully, that will help. Maybe Arteta has like his three center backs. Maybe he gets rid of Holding and brings in someone else. Like Austin Trusty won Birmingham Player of the Year. I mean, maybe that's an option. I don't know. Who knows?
Oh yeah, because he's American, right?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's good for us to hear.
Hmm.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see how it translates to the EPL, or they might just loan him back out again. Who knows? But yeah, Holding might be gone. I don't know. We'll see. It'll be
Because
interesting.
I'm curious if because I mean it seems like Arteta has done a lot to I don't want to say like copy Pep, but he has taken a lot of influence from Pep, and I don't
Yeah,
necessarily know if this formation, this play style that he's done this year, is necessarily what he's going to stick with. Going forward. So if he does want to play three at the back, you obviously do need another center back, but you also need center backs that are good with the ball at their feet because that is
yeah.
why it works for Pep. That's why it's not necessarily a defensive only formation that you're able to still be you're able to kind of switch things around in the field a little bit better. And I do think going forward, if Jesus is going to work out, and I'll get to this point later. I do think there's going to need a formation change. I don't necessarily. I think I brought this up a little bit with you before, but looking at the positions he was getting it in this game, he wasn't playing as a nine. He was never really in the box. He was looking for the ball, closer. He was kind of close to Odegaard, almost like he was looking to be a creator. And when he got to the ball, I thought he was too quickly to pass it away. So need to do something about that, which I have an idea. We'll get to that as well. Um,
Ooh.
I mean, both teams made changes in the second half. Jorginho came off, Shaka came off, Party and Reece Nelson, and Rice immediately he came on and had a decent shot. This
Yeah,
is and we saw something that we hadn't really seen up to this point. He got the ball, looked for the angle to get the shot off, and I don't think Still's getting this if it is on target. It just kind of spins away at the very end, but at least he at least took someone on and got a shot off. And then we saw Welbeck come on for Billy Gilmore, and what this did was people thought, oh, it's going to be Welbeck for Ferguson, and no. He took Billy Gilmore off, and Brighton were actually going long a little bit more in the second half. And what that was doing is, Ferguson and Welbeck were winning those second balls, winning those duels. So,
yeah, yeah. Good point.
and then we'll get to the second goal because it is just kind of a Trossard giveaway. I mean, Arsenal did have a couple chances here. I have Trossard for a few of these, so they win the ball back thanks to a poor McAllister pass. Trossard is hesitant to fire an early shot, and he tries to cut back and then loses the ball. He's in the box, so he needs to shoot here, and then he actually does shoot for the second chance. Odegaard finds a pocket of space, feeds him the ball. And Trossard does do well here. He gets good power on the shot, and the only issue is it's right to Will Still. This is probably your best chance. And then
Yeah,
in the 89th minute, Ramsdale does a risky pass to him, and Trossard's trying to one time the ball to someone forward, and the ball is instead intercepted by Pascal Gross. The ball kind of falls kindly to Undev in the box, and Ramsdale's in no man's land, and Undev has a really nice chip finish to really pretty much finish the game. Um,
yeah. Good
and it's
finish too.
it's it's ecstasy for Brighton fans because it's Trossard that makes the mistake. Um, but before that goal, Eddie Nketiah has a nice turn into the Brighton box. So Eddie Nketiah has since come on at this point, and there's no one next to him to square a ball to. That's the only issue. So he has this really nice turn, and he has to go it alone. And instead of maybe trying a shot from a tight angle, he tries to buy PK, and the refs having none of it. And then the third
Yeah,
goal comes from just Brighton taking a shot, Ramsdale kind of spilling it, and then Estupiñán following up. But uh, up there for and the reason to touch on Estupiñán, you mentioned him as well, is he's up there for signing of the season, at least replacement of the season, considering he was brought in to replace Mark Cucurella, and he's looked a better player, to be honest.
yeah,
And
yeah. He really has.
he gets the goal at the end, but he set up the first goal. I thought he's player of the game.
Mm. Yeah, and it's nice to see, and we've talked about this before with Brighton, but it's Stupiñán, Matoma, Caicedo, guys that really weren't from big leagues or big countries, and they're getting scouted by Brighton, and Matoma in the J League comes over because Brighton did their due diligence and went to J League games, and Estupinan, it was like in Ecuador. So their ability to come in and
Well,
get these players for cheap is amazing.
he was at Villarreal. I don't necessarily know if
Oh,
he
well, yeah, 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 yeah.
I
He
don't
was
nec-
at Ecuador before that.
I
Yeah.
don't necessarily know if he played in the Champions League semifinal, but I do know he played. I think he came on as a sub, but I do remember seeing him because he played versus Chelsea in that like Super Cup, and I remember him impressing.
Mhm.
But that's
Yeah,
just
it's,
Brighton.
it's great.
That's just Brighton being really good scouting.
Yeah,
So
and Insizo could be another guy
see,
like that.
that's a player I'd
He
never heard
seems
of before.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, me neither. And you talked about Evan Ferguson too. So yeah, the future looks really bright. De Zerbi's a great manager too. Weird to say, but an upgrade on Potter maybe.
I
They
think so.
actually ended up
Yeah.
getting the benefit of the doubt there. Like they won that one totally. And Potter's probably like, I should have never left. But
Well, we'll maybe get to that because Brighton. There are a couple of teams in London, Arsenal of one, Chelsea or another, that have tried to poke around at Brighton, and it seems Brighton have gotten the better of maybe both. Because we'll get to it.
yeah,
Arsenal tried to get Casado in January, and I do think this was maybe where it could have changed, because there was a reason they went after him in January. They ended up get Jorginho instead, and Jorginho helped them win a couple games, as we've seen. But getting the I think you would have wrapped it up had you been able to get him then. But it is what it
mm.
is. Another
Yeah.
thing.
Jorginho's no Caicedo, unfortunately.
Another thing that happened was, we've mentioned Saliba, a number of times, and obviously, it maybe changed the party's game. Obviously, it changed. Holding came back and wasn't nearly the same player, but before the Saliba loss, I remember talking to you that when we were watching Arsenal, it was for Sporting. I think even versus Bournemouth, Arsenal were basically playing with two center backs alone at the back, and what they were doing is they were holding the width. They were almost like your fullbacks, and Party was almost like your makeshift third guy in the back. So what you saw was a front six and then two in midfield, and just Arsenal were able to just kind of maintain pressure because Gabriel and Saliba were really good at handling those 1v1s out wide. I remember they're talking about Revis Island. They were cornerbacks on islands, but they were really good at doing that.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
Party was able to cover it in case. Once you lost Saliba, you weren't able to play that way. Um, so and then with
yeah,
Brighton,
yeah, absolutely.
The way that Casado was playing, it was almost positionless. But even at the same, towards the end of the or after the game, De Serbi even said that they went man for man in defense, and so what that meant was Levi Colwell had like Odegaard, who was like marking him the entire game, and you mentioned how maybe we have a gem in Trusty. England maybe has a gem in Levi Colwell,
Yeah,
because he's
absolutely.
quite young as well, but all of Brighton's play, I do think, starts with the keeper. And one of the main changes that De Zerbi did is he stopped playing Robert Sanchez. You mentioned how you maybe liked him for his saves, uh, and maybe still has some issues. He didn't necessarily have his best game versus Everton. Just the way that he holds on to the ball and baits teams to run at him, and just so often, he was doing a decent impression, I thought, of Ederson, to be honest, because whenever Arsenal tried to press. Still was just able to, to debate bait Arsenal to run at him, and what that did was that left more space. As you move more players forward, that makes you more vulnerable at the back end. That creates a bigger space for, say a Matoma or Enciso to try to run at, and they're really good at doing that time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
And so, what do you Martinelli? Um, Trying to think of what we haven't necessarily covered. Okay. So you mentioned last week you may be concerned about the. Okay, yeah, you mentioned you were concerned about the Everton result going into this, and so one thing that thinking they'd be up for it, and I do think it's maybe worth focusing on that Everton performance, uh, but because they went at Brighton differently, I thought so. I think if there's one critique of Arteta, and this is where I really want to get to, is I do think there's been a lack of a way to play different styles, and
Mm.
so Everton were really effective at having Calvert-Lewin running at Lewis Dunk, and Dunk probably had his worst game because of that. I thought it made Stupien vulnerable out of position, and they kept having a threat in behind that Brighton did not necessarily want to deal with. And Arsenal's Jesus, I thought, was too far behind the play. It just seemed it was Saka as the forward outlet because Trossard wasn't necessarily offering that as well. I also thought there was maybe a lack of physical aggression from Arsenal. There was a foul
Mm.
on Matoma, but you never really saw any like serious challenges after that. Shaka tried to do that thing versus Trent versus Liverpool, and I didn't necessarily see any of that. So I thought that was interesting, but. Uh,
Good point.
I think I mentioned it before. This is what I really want to get to is I did think it was a mistake to start Gabby Jesus in this game. It maybe worked versus Newcastle, but I didn't think it necessarily worked here because Nketiah did terrorize the same Brighton team. Uh, so
Oh, that's a good point too. Yeah, and Nketiah did just he kind of made a little cameo, but it just wasn't enough time to really influence the match at that point.
and so let's see. Yeah, I mean this. So we mentioned the. Let's see. So to talk a little bit on Brighton. We mentioned how the reason why they become like the hipsters like favorite team is they invite risk. So it's not just like you hear building possession from the back, and sometimes that can be insanely boring and dull because they just want to keep possession and they just want to maybe tire someone out. They're not necessarily
Mhm.
doing that. What another thing too is Arsenal did actually force a few turnovers, and they stuck with it. So they're not afraid of what they're trying to do. So it invites insanely amount of risk, but what it also does is it creates space. And so, you're not just seeing Lewis Dunk, having 100 passes with him and Will Steele, next to each other. The first goal comes from Arsenal getting baited, and then Lovie Colwell doing a really nice ball over the top. And so
Yeah,
that's worth saying. And then the Everton loss, I guess maybe took them off a little bit course, but they do have a chance of maybe still getting a Europa spot. They don't have the easiest number of games left. They have Newcastle tomorrow, which we'll have to see what they have left in the tank for that game. I'm personally hoping they win because if Newcastle gets, I think just one more. If Newcastle and United get one more win, I think that gets them to a point where Liverpool can't catch them. So
yeah,
hopefully they drop points there as well. And then if they do get Conference League or Europa football, I mean, how do you think? Do you think it'd be different with Brighton than necessarily we've seen other teams? Now we've seen West Ham take Conference League in Europe really seriously. Some to a detriment. You could maybe say, but it does feel
yeah,
like Brighton are maybe handled a little bit differently because they have so many youngsters on the team that they've bought with almost like this kind of outlook, a future outlook. So, I mean, what do you
yeah.
maybe
They got
expect?
a lot of young players.
Yeah,
Oh, just the style they play is a lot different from other teams in other leagues. So I think they could surprise a couple teams in a Europa League or Europa Conference League type situation. But I mean, they would still have to strengthen the squad a lot because I think West Ham's a perfect example of suffering in the league because you are kind of just draining the squad with these extra games.
I agree.
But it would be really fun to see Brighton play against some of these European teams that really don't have teams that play like Brighton do in their respective domestic leagues. So I kind of want them to do it because it would be fun to see. But yeah, I guess they would just have to continue scouting and get some of those younger players in. And it's also a good proving ground for those young guys who don't play as much. See what you got. They got like Bonanote. Maybe he could play a lot more, get more minutes.
Yep.
Undav still, some other players. So yeah, it'd be fun to see.
Yeah, because one thing that I'm trying to think about is this just maybe a special year? I think they've even said that this is the highest point total they've ever finished with. Or can this really be built into something unique? Because they are likely to lose a lot of players. Liverpool's been all over Alexis
Mhm.
McAllister. Obviously, people are going to be big suitors for Moise Caicedo, maybe a Stupian after this, and so
Mhm.
we'll see what they're able to do. Now they will be able to get a king's ransom for those players as well. But
Absolutely.
they've been able to move on from losing Basuma, losing Ben White, losing Mark Cucurella without any kind of issue. The only issue has been they still maybe seem a little bit weak at the striker spot. Now you do have Evan Ferguson. He is only 18. It is amazing how young he is. And then you have Welbeck. Welbeck's not always necessarily reliable. Um, the name I was thinking about is if you do lose maybe Casado, I would be interested maybe if they could go for Yunus Musa.
Hmm.
which would be awesome for us because I do feel like
Yeah,
they have replacements already in place. So Billy Gilmore could maybe be McAllister's replacement. I don't know what they would do if they lost Casado. I do feel like they need a right back. Casado's been their makeshift right back in some of these games. They have Lamptey, but I don't necessarily know if that's necessarily the long term strategy because he's had a number of his injury issues, and I feel like they
yeah,
can maybe improve on the second striker spot. I don't necessarily know if Undev is that player. I was having fun with Jeremy about this. Should if they were able to get a king's ransom for a number of these players, they could probably get enough for 150 million to play around with.
yeah.
Would they be able to entertain Harry Kane?
I don't know. I don't think
Probably not.
so.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I would just like. Well, it's just me personally would just spend that one Harry Kane lump sum on like 4 or 5 different players,
Other players,
especially if
yeah.
you're, yeah, if you're in Europa League and you need to strengthen the squad. But
'Cause
I mean, if they got,
if they had the
it'd be crazy if they got him.
insurances that De Zerbi would be there, I think Brighton, with where they are now, is already a better project long term than Spurs. Um,
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
Now
Yeah, definitely.
maybe Chelsea with Pochettino will try to go for Kane. To be honest, Man United seem interesting. They're probably going to be the leading candidate for them. If you had the insurances that Brighton would be able to, that De Zerbi would stay there. I think they could win something with Kane. I don't necessarily know if I'm not going to say the
Hmm.
league. I do think they could win a trophy at minimum. Um, so,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I would agree with that.
you mentioned some of the players. Brendan Ate. They brought in Yassin Ayari, who we haven't necessarily seen get a number of games, but it's just Sarmiento is on the squad. They have Simon. I saw Andindra. I can't say names. Who's on loan for Belgian league. So it just seems they do have plans in place, and it seems already we've seen players develop under De Zerbi. So who knows what this Brighton team can be.
Yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit. It would be great to see him in Europa.
And for Arsenal, I do want to have a little fun with this. I think eventually you're going to have to look at a right back. I don't necessarily think Ben White is a long term solution. I think you can maybe use Ben White if you go to a back three. Ben White could be serviceable in a back three, or maybe even as a center back. I was wondering if Ben White could or if Saliba could play on the other side, and you could try Ben White as the right center back. I don't necessarily know if Saliba can necessarily do that
Mm.
because I feel like Gabriel is maybe an issue as well. Uh,
Yeah.
and they are linked to an interesting name. I'm going to mention Kyle Walker Peters, maybe on a cheap.
Mm.
Maybe that's someone Brighton could look at. Anyone but Newcastle should get Kyle Walker Peters. I don't want necessarily Newcastle to get Trippier's replacement on the cheap. But the NBC crew acted like this was a mourning ceremony, and I think bringing this back to perspective, Arsenal finished on 69 points last season, and they're 81 now, and they were able to take this Galantic City team to the break, and I think it's more been a case of Arsenal overperforming, overachieving all year than necessarily them having a letdown. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, I would definitely agree.
the midfield is in question, and so Andrew thinks Smith Rowe can maybe be groomed to be Shaka's replacement. Mentioned
That's what I'm hearing.
Shaka might be
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
The other
yep.
thing I was, if maybe you could offer him to West Ham if you could to lower the Declan Rice deal. You bring Declan Rice in, because I feel like they would probably be really interested in that because Smith Rowe could probably, if he wants to play a more attacking minded role, he probably fit more at that club than
Mhm.
necessarily because you look at he's going to have to change positions in my opinion. I don't see him being able to play
Get game time. Yeah, yeah.
over Martinelli or Trussard.
Or Odegaard, or yeah,
Yeah,
I agree completely. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I've seen them be linked to Rice and Caicedo, which would be crazy, and that would push more towards your theory that maybe Shaka might be going to the door too, because you can't have bring those two in and have Partey, Jorginho, and Shaka or Sambi too. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be an interesting summer. But yeah, I think they're ahead of schedule in terms of where Arsenal fans thought they would be this year. We thought maybe we'd be challenging for the top four, not challenging for the title. So yeah, it is about perspective a little bit.
and Liverpool missed out on City by like 3 points in 2018, where it seemed like they just everyone kind of assumed, well, because Liverpool didn't do any business that following month summer. People were like, "Oh, Liverpool going to be able to regroup themselves? How are you going to get over that hump?" And then they actually ended up kind of killing it in the next season to win it. So there is kind of precedent to kind of turn it around, and a lot of this city title, Holland's going to get his goals and whatnot, but this is going to come down to uh, City being really good in defense, but all because they've been healthy for the first time like ever. And two, it's going to be from Kevin De Bruyne and Gundogan just kind of being individually brilliant in key parts from April and on. And maybe you won't have them next season. So
Yeah,
there's
it's
still reason
true.
for hope. But I do think instead of necessarily looking if Arsenal's board and coaching staff to look at, oh, we've got to chase City. I think what you need to do is you need to chase a point total. You need to look at how can you get to 93, 92 points.
Mhm.
So don't focus on City alone. Where have you fallen short on that? And obviously, it's been the Saliba loss. You mentioned they could maybe improve on that DM spot. So they've been linked to Rice. Lavia is probably another option as well. We mentioned Casado as well. I'm gonna throw out a name that's a little bit different. I have actually seen him linked all of a sudden. Is Cancelo. And so you could maybe
Yeah,
try
me too. Weird.
Cancelo at right back. Well, I think it's like the City thing. They just people want to have fun and call it City Light. Um,
Mhm.
but you could play Cancelo inverted, almost like Zinchenko. And what you'd have is you'd have two and then basically three in midfield, and that would help you with build up. So basically, because you have Zinchenko doing a job that Ben White can't necessarily replicate. This way, you would have both. So I feel like that would make you a lot. It would change how teams would be able to press Arsenal. Obviously,
Yeah.
they've done a good job pressing all year. I think that would really help. And then another thing I want to ask you is, do you think Arsenal can win a title with Jesus as your leading striker?
Ugh. Yeah, I think so. Just because they were close this year.
That's fair.
Um, but yeah, other things I think are going to have to happen. You're going to maybe get a backup striker instead of Nketiah, just someone that maybe scores more goals, just to take some of the pressure off. And then you're still going to have like really good seasons by Saka, Martinelli, and Odegaard again. Because like all three have double digits in goal assists. That might not happen next year. So next year it could be completely different. You could be saying, yeah, Jesus is good, but we need a little bit more. I don't know. It'll just depend. But it would be interesting to see them maybe switch to like a back three, and if they had Zinchenko and Cancelo as like wingbacks, and then you
Wingbacks,
had
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you had like Saliba, White, and Gabriel or Kivor, whoever. That would be quite fun to watch. And like you said, maybe Pep. I mean, not Pep. Gosh, I was getting confused too. Arteta wants to just bring in more people so that he can change styles of play. Maybe he just doesn't feel comfortable doing that with what he has now, with the personnel he has now.
I'm hoping that's the case. Yeah, because when Arteta first arrived at Arsenal, I thought he was mostly playing a back three. I remember it was
He was
the kind
because
of
he
football
didn't
was like
wait.
very
He
bland,
didn't
very
have the
defensive.
personnel
Right.
to do what he wanted
So
again. But
I'm hoping that is the case. So we'll necessarily see if that pans out because Jesus has had good moments here and there, obviously. But it's just at least in this game, I just think you need someone to be inside the box, not necessarily outside it. And so one thing I kind of played around with, I did a little mock 11, as they say. So you have Encadia at the top. I put Ivan Tony at the top as well. Tony might be able to you might be able to get him for cheap because I think he's going to be suspended for half a season. But that's only half a season. I thought it was going to be a lot worse than that. But then you have Martinelli, and what I did is I put a Jesus and Odegaard as double tens, and
ooh,
then Saka on the wing, and then you have someone like Declan Rice, who you have someone playing underneath. But the issue would be that person would have to have positional awareness of not necessarily to basically hold. Essentially, sometimes Declan Rice has had a different role at West Ham, where he's like to kind of carry the ball a little bit. You can't leave that space if you're going to be that holding player. But then you have Zinchenko, Gabriel Saliba, and then if you had Cancelo, you could play Zinchenko and Cancelo kind of next to Declan Rice in a line. Obviously,
yeah,
that would
be
require
interesting.
Saka. The width would come from Saka and Martinelli, and both would be asked to be defensive minded as well. Track back if in those moments. But I think that would change a little bit how you can. That could get a little bit more out of Gabriel Jesus, in my opinion, with him playing with someone in front of him. Because I think,
Yeah, yeah, could help
yeah,
take a little burden off of him too.
yeah. And with you can also with that kind of a shape, you can find a way to play Trossard. You can play Trossard in the Jesus role or Martinello's role. If you keep Bryce Neslin, you can play him instead of Saka. I think that was maybe a chance where I think Arteta did mess up. I felt Saka needed some rest. Maybe you could play Jesus on the right. But
Yeah,
Saka
it's a
needed.
good idea.
I think Saka got a little exhausted
Me
towards the end
too.
of the season.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's no one really to come in and take his spot. So yeah, Arteta's had to roll with him for like the majority of the games and Europa League too. I think. I think he played a lot of Europa League.
And then we move on to Newcastle and Leeds. This one, a bit of a nice surprise to wake up to. It was 2-2, and I feel like that was really that was probably the proper score. To be honest, now it could have been a little bit different. Leeds had a chance to go 2-0 up, and then Patrick Bamford kind of he hasn't necessarily had the best season this year, and you maybe saw why. As he missed a PK, or perhaps saved it, however way you want to interpret that. They did get the first goal
Yeah.
with Luke Ayling, and then Callum Wilson got two PKs himself. He showed how you take a PK. And then Christensen kind of came out in the clutch with a really nice goal. It was like a volley hit, and I think it was kind of fitting that Christensen and Luke Ayling, two of Leeds
And
defenders, helped out with the goals because I don't think necessarily either have been necessarily good defending this year. So there's at
yeah,
least some of
not at
that.
all.
And so there we go. So
Yeah, two of the like most unlikely goal scorers for Leeds.
really,
And
yeah,
we were talking about. I mean, the last couple shows we just talked about how poor the back four is for Leeds, and it's kind of funny to see them actually score. But still, conceded two goals, two PKs, so they're still not great at defending. But at least they scored and got up the pitch, and they got a point. It could be a big point. We'll see.
it could. It definitely did change a little bit because I think a lot of people were not expecting Leeds to get anything out of this game, and they at least Uh, who do they have next? They have Spurs at the end. Oh, they have West Ham coming up. And West Ham, you imagine, are going to rest a ton of players, just like we saw this past week. And West Ham did not necessarily look good versus Brentford. Leeds have
Yeah,
a
and
chance.
West Ham's gonna have that Europa League too in
Leeds have a
between,
chance
so
to
they might be
win.
more tired.
Leeds have a chance to win that game. Right. Leeds have a chance to win that game. Play West Ham without Declan Rice, and they do. Does that get them in 34? So that
Let
one
me look at this.
that one result did give them a chance, and then they have Spurs. We don't know what Spurs have to play at the end of the season as well. So this was monstrous result for them. It's only a point, but hey, it is something. And Allardyce is doing something because he did change it up a little bit. We saw Robin Koch in midfield. We saw basically a three-man midfield. We saw McKennie play a little bit better, I thought. We also saw Rodrigo playing with Bamford, and that's kind of where the goal comes from. There's Bamford gets the ball out wide, and he's able to cross the ball into someone, and Rodrigo wins the header, it forces a save, and then Ailing's able to kind of get the rebound. Um, so it's just kind of a short term thing, but at least Allardyce has at least given them reason to believe. At least we'll see where we
Yeah,
are next week because they have to win. It has to be 3 points versus West
yeah,
Ham. So we'll
they'll
see.
start winning.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But the point might help. I mean, they're only a point out now, so anything's possible. And I mean, Sam will be the lead savior if he can somehow manage to keep them in the Prem for another year. But
Guy
I
will
don't think he's the guy going forward,
guy
right?
will
Like if
never
they
have to
did
buy
stay,
guy would never have to buy a bite of beer or he like
yeah,
he likes drinking his wine in a Leeds brewery or area.
because he's not the coach
If
for
that
the future. Like
happens.
if he did keep them up, that like
No,
he's
not at
gone
all.
in the summer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I thought. So yeah, I mean, maybe he can do it. If anyone can do it, it's Big Sam.
And with Leeds, I think something that we've started to see in this past few weeks because we saw it versus Arsenal, we also saw it versus Southampton is Newcastle is starting to concede first. I don't
Mhm.
necessarily know if they're not necessarily starting off well, and they were able to at least rebound from that before that Christensen goal. But one thing that I'm noticing is they haven't had Sean Longstaff for a lot of these games. And I feel like what he does, what he offers without the ball, is immense, and it's not something they've been able to replicate. Because what you're seeing Joe Linton kind of playing a little bit more in midfield when he was actually kind of playing a little bit more further forward, and Ishak has come in and he's playing Wilson and Ishak together. I don't necessarily think it's necessarily the same thing. I feel like they are missing what Longstaff offers. So we'll see if that shows up for Brighton. But maybe not. And then with I guess we'll get started with I guess we went over the goals. What would maybe your main takeaways, or what do you think of the Bamford miss? Do you think that's maybe going to be going to mess with his head a little bit, or
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's so rusty too, and it was a good save, but it was a terrible PK. It was it
I
was
thought so too.
at a comfortable height.
It was weak.
Yeah, it was just weak. Maybe it's just a little bit of that rustiness showing because he hasn't played consistent games in like 2 years.
Yep.
So
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't bode well for him in these next two games, but you never know. I mean, all these injuries, he's probably pretty strong mentally, so he'll probably get over that. And the fact that they did end up with a point, it's not like they lost 2-1 and his PK would have gotten them the point kind of thing. I mean, his PK would have gotten them the 3 points, I guess you could look at it that way.
Well,
But I think he's pretty mentally strong.
well,
It's just
yeah,
he's rusty.
because it would have given them a 2 lead. And then immediately they concede. So who knows? Because
Yeah.
they have been poor defensively. It's funny. Furpo draws the PK. So Furpo was having a good game before this too, and then Furpo ended up actually getting a red card because he
Yeah.
Furpo has the hand for an issue, and Furpo. I think he didn't necessarily draw the first PK, but he fell down, and then Werber came over and clattered into Callum Wilson.
Yeah.
So these
Yeah, those former Barca fullbacks in the Premier League, Semedo, Firpo,
well, they're not
they're
going to have
very up and down.
it's maybe a blessing. They're not going to have him for first West Ham because of that red card. Going to be without
Yeah.
him. So we'll see. I mean, I think the positive here is Leeds have gone into so many games where they've only been one goal down. It was only a one goal game versus Liverpool, or maybe it was two. Yeah, it was one after Nato scored. It was 2-1 in the second half. I think it was a one goal lead versus Crystal Palace, and we saw Leeds then concede 4 or 5 in those games. I feel like it was a similar with when Leeds played Arsenal, where it was only maybe a one goal game, and then Arsenal ended up winning 4-1. And so we didn't see that. We didn't see them necessarily buckle that way. I mean, the goals they conceded were just really bad PKs.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that Sam Allardyce can do individually the poor. But he has. I did feel like the structure is a little bit better, and I did think he made a good second half change. So he brought on Forshaw for Greenwood, and I thought Forshaw had a number of big recoveries to help him
Definitely.
out. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, the
Yeah,
stats
maybe Forshaw should have started him.
the stats weren't kind. I mean, 163 passing is numbers that I've been making fun of Southampton for. You can't keep the ball, so you're doing a lot of running. They at least did look better at pressing. So
Mm.
maybe he's found a way to get them new life. Newcastle did have 18 shots and 5 on target, but the XG was 2-2. So
Pass accuracy for Leeds is just shockingly bad too at 64%,
yeah,
compared to 80 for Newcastle. Ugh.
and I think it was interesting to see Newcastle and Man City almost back to back playing Leeds because it looked entirely different, and that's maybe something for Newcastle's for Eddie Howe or whoever to look at, and that's where they need to improve. They aren't able to keep the ball nearly as well. Not a lot of teams can keep the ball like Man City, but
Yeah. Yeah, true.
there's a shocking difference, and that's a reason why some of this happened is they weren't able
Mm.
to necessarily move them around and tire their legs out a little bit. But
Yeah,
and they
definitely.
have started to concede, but they still control their fate. So we'll see what happens versus Brighton. Um, and they didn't turn around and play a Leicester side that I don't think they have any other option but to win that game, or they face relegation. So they're going to face a
Yeah.
lesser side that is desperate. So we'll see what Newcastle have left in the tank. It's not necessarily the easiest 2 games left for them either.
Yeah, even though Leicester's at the bottom of the table or close to the bottom of the table, they're going to have their back against the wall. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting these last 2 weeks.
And we'll move on to Man United and Wolves. Man United do win 2-0 from Martial and then Garnacho. I mentioned last week I thought they were missing Garnacho. I was not expecting him to return.
Me
And
neither.
that's aged well, but it's also I didn't want it to age well because I fear that helping them a little bit because they didn't have Rashford this game, and they were able to get Varane back, but they didn't have Rashford this game. We don't know if what how long he's going to be out for these next couple of weeks, but there was a lot of intrigue going in with that storyline and. To be honest, they were able to kind of get by it. Martial scores, but I think maybe the player of the game, or at least not necessarily good, but at least the player to talk about is Anthony. Anthony was kind of able to offer the runs that we had that maybe Rashford would have offered, he offered it on the other side, and he had a bit of a wild game. I mean, do you want to kind of get started there?
Yeah, he's very up and down, it seems like.
Yes,
But yeah, I mean, he did play well this game. It's not a bad first season in the Premier League, but clearly there's some things he probably can improve on. But I think he's been more productive than Sancho, and
I agree.
at
I agree with that.
the
Yeah.
price tags for this for both, Sancho was what 30 million more. So yeah, I think it's been a good first season, but there's definitely some things he can improve on. And honestly, I think with Ten Hag, I think he will improve on him because Ten Hag, I think, is a really good coach. And then our buddy Alex is talking about them. Obviously, they're going to probably try to get rid of Maguire and bring in maybe Kim from Napoli, who's
Yep.
just a amazing player and amazing player for South Korea in the World Cup too. So yeah, if I'm a United fan, as long as we can clinch top four, things are going to, I think, be turning. Wheels are going to be turning in the summer, and they're going to strengthen some spots. And yeah, we have United and Arsenal back in the Champions League like the good old days.
Well, hopefully, well, that would maybe if
Not the
Newcastle
expense of Liverpool.
if if
Yeah,
if
yeah, not
Newcastle
it.
if Newcastle can miss out, I'll be able to join you guys
Mm.
with that, but
Yep, yep, yep.
we'll see. Um, yeah, I do want to go over a couple of these chances that Anthony had because it highlights the game that he had because there are a lot of positives and then there are a lot of like you said things that first half or first year jitters I guess we could say. So the first
Yeah,
chance comes
maybe.
from
Yeah.
a bad giveaway from Craig Dawson just kind of trying to pass it to Kilman. Anthony runs onto the free ball, dribbles towards the net, and then he has a curling effort that goes wide. It's good that he had the confidence to take on the shot. And it's the first of many adventures with him. But he easily could have played a square ball to Martial, basically almost a tap in goal. Uh, and then he gets a second chance, and it's another bad giveaway on the ball by Wolves. United get the ball outside. Shaw sends a really good cross that finds Anthony's head, and he heads it over the bar. Now this one, it's more of a case of just unluck thing here. He does well to he makes a really good run to actually get in front of the fullback, so he recognizes there. I think he gets good height on it, and he just it's just unfortunate with the head going over. But we'll get to the goal because the goal he does what he didn't do for that first shot. So he gets the ball down the white channel again, and this time he does see Martial and he squares it to him. The keeper he does well to make the commitment. The keeper commit to Anthony, and then he squares it for a tap in. But this goal also comes from a few really good plays. First from Christensen, Ericsson. So he does like a 5 yard, 10 yard pass. To get the ball forward, to get it to Bruno, and then Bruno wins, or he gets it to Sancho, and then Sancho tries to do a pass to Bruno. It's kind of a hospital pass. Bruno does amazing to win this 50-50 challenge, and what that does is Kilman tries to gamble on this Bruno pass, and because he misses, this is why Anthony is able to have all that freedom on that side because I think it was Tony Gomez. He had no idea what to do. He was like, "Should I run with Anthony or should I try to stop Bruno?" And it's because Kilman gets caught being out of position. So that's where the goal comes from. Um, and then let's see. There was another
Yeah,
chance. There was
yeah,
another chance
definitely.
that Anthony had. So it was close to halftime. He has the chance to basically create the same kind of goal for Sancho that he just created with Martial. So he gets the ball down the wing. He is able to beat. I think he get places past Kilman again. And then he's reluctant to try a square ball in the box with his right foot. All he has to do is just run down the wing and then just do a simple pass with his right foot, which he did with Martial. That goal comes from him having confidence to kind of make a pass with his right foot. These are minor things, but for some reason, some of these players don't like doing anything with their opposite foot. And what he does is he cuts inside and lays it off to Martial, who's outside the box. Chance is really gone. Martial tries a long shot, and nothing comes from it. And another thing he could have done is he could have squared the ball to Ericsson, and then Ericsson would have probably found Sancho in the box. So uh, these are where Anthony needs to improve in the offseason because he
Absolutely.
has a
Yeah.
number of these, and then yeah, so. Uh, let's see, and
Yeah.
then there's another chance. We'll get to the Garnacho goal. Wolves are trying to create a chance in injury time. They just send the ball into a pack box. United win the ball back, and then after a few clearances, the ball finds Bruno. Bruno looks up and plays a perfect through ball to Garnacho to run onto. But from there, he still has a lot to do. So we saw all game, all second half. where Sancho or Antony were trying to get a shot off, and what they were doing is they kept missing the far post, or they kept trying to go for the post and kept either hitting it right to the keeper or hitting it wide. And what Garnacho did is he was able to fool the defender. He effectively he was going to cut one way and he cut the other way, and he kissed the shot. He kissed the far post. And what you saw was not only is he a threat to make these decisions in behind, he's got a head on him when he gets the ball in the box. Because the move that he did to freeze the defender is something that he knew what he wanted to do. It wasn't just it was kind of instinctive. He wasn't like freaking out.
Mm.
He didn't have like a million things kind of running into his head. Where oh, what do I do if to screw up? And so this is
Right.
a reason why this is a special player because he has insane pace, but he has a finish on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, things the ceiling is very high for him. You would imagine, things will just get better for him after he settles down from his first year.
And Rashford missing, I did feel like, oh, maybe Wolves can get something in this game, and they were awful. There was like
They really were.
there was no threat in this all game, and really I mean the score line I think was kind for it to only be 2-0 because Anthony Sancho whoever were having fun with their back line 1v1s and just David Bentley, the keeper, got a debut. He got a good workout. He made 8
Yeah,
saves, to be fair to him. I mean, Man United had 27 shots and 9 on target, 4 big
yeah,
chances. And the only reason why it wasn't maybe worse was Bentley made a couple good saves.
yeah. 27 shots to Wolverhampton's 5, 9 on target to Wolverhampton's 0. So yeah, I mean, passing wise, not bad. 50% possession. They had 470 passes, 80% accuracy. But like you said, just no threat up top, and that's been a big problem for them all year. I mean, just throwing like people in and just seeing what sticks. Like old Diego Costa can't get it done.
Beach
I mean, they're gonna have to strengthen that for sure in the summer.
Beach is good this time of the year. Maybe they're thinking about that. I mean,
Yeah,
they've been
Beach
able
is
to
good. Yeah.
they've been able to avoid relegation. When we get to Wolves, they've done something that I didn't realize only 4 teams have done, which is Lopetegui has come in and so that is worth celebrating as well. But to touch on United, they get the second goal. I feel like they were probably going to win with just 1-0. Because Wolves didn't really create any kind of threat, but they get the second one because of Bruno, and he's now created 31 big chances in the season. I think he's up there with Kevin De Bruyne in that respect. He had 6 key passes in this game, and he's got 6 goals, maybe 8 assists. I feel like there could be more, but he's quietly had a bounce back. He's had a really good season. Um,
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and with United, you're getting Varane back, and what that does is you're able to play Luke Shaw in the left back spot, and Shaw basically should have had an assist in this game, but that makes you a little bit stronger defensively. I thought. You mentioned the Maguire thing. Alex thought Maguire was going to come on. Maybe he did, and it didn't necessarily hurt
It did.
in that game. And they are linked to, like you said, Kim Min Jae, and I think he's also a left-footed center back. So that does sound like they are going to ship Maguire out. So we'll see what happens necessarily with
Yeah,
him. Uh, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. He'll probably be gone.
be interesting actually if Maguire did go to Italy because we've seen Tomori kind of do well in for AC Milan. Chelsea didn't necessarily want him, and he's done well there. And we've seen Chris Smalling, I think, do well for Roma. So
Yeah, that's true.
maybe that's not the worst league for Maguire to go to. Well, we'll see if it's a straight swap or something else. Um, and so United
Yeah,
have Bruno said it quite forwardly. 6 points and they secure Champions League, and so they have Bournemouth, who really don't have much to play for, didn't necessarily look great in the weekend, and then they have Fulham, and I think Fulham is going to be interesting because Fulham maybe don't like United after what happened with the FA game. So we'll see. Mitrovic
yeah,
is finally back, so maybe we'll see if Mitrovic tries to get some revenge. But United have to like where they are right now.
yeah. Absolutely, definitely. They've worked hard to be where they are now, and yeah, I mean, I think things will get better when they can strengthen and just have another window bringing in players that Ten Hag wants.
And then with Wolves, I think they have a big offseason ahead for the club. Maybe they're going to lose a few players. I know Mateus Nunes has been linked. Neves, I think, is running down to the end of his contract. Yeah, Lopetegui has come in, and he's the reason why it's worth kind of celebrating what he's done is beach stuff aside. Only 4 this has only happened 4 times where a team that was sitting at the bottom of the table on Christmas has stayed up. And, the last team to do it is an interesting team as well because it was Leicester City,
Ooh,
the year before they won the league. So maybe there's
really?
reason for hope, for Wolves, but probably not.
Mm,
But
that's interesting, though. Very interesting.
Lopetegui is a good coach, so we'll see, but I do think they're gonna have to get this offseason right because I think if they don't, Wolves would maybe be a team I would maybe kinda pencil in as a team I would predict in the beginning of the season, because I just don't think they have enough. I don't think you can get
Mm,
a season out of Diego Costa.
yeah,
Jimenez
yeah,
is kind of hit and miss. I fear the worst 'cause he hasn't been able to necessarily recover from that injury. They did bring in that Kolasinac, 6'7" striker that ended up, doing his ACL like the first like 15 minutes when they brought him back in the fall. So uh, maybe he'll be able to recover and do something for them. But it does feel like a number of these teams actually are going to have to do a facelift. So we'll see
yeah.
what that brings.
Yeah, always going to be interesting, fun summer transfer topics and gossip. That's one of the things. Even though the season is over, at least the transfer gossip is so fun, and it just kind of keeps you connected to the EPL, even though the games aren't being played. So
Well,
yeah, I look forward to
with the
that.
EPL clash, all of these clubs have actually got some money to throw around. We're not seeing this in other leagues, and it doesn't feel
Yeah,
like that's going to change. Um,
top to bottom. Yeah, you see like Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest spending a ton of money, so it literally is the top clubs and the lower clubs.
Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest spending more than like Real Madrid, or
Yeah, it's crazy.
AC Milan,
Crazy.
like the two Milan clubs. I don't think spent in any kind of money in the winter, or it was like six
Mhm.
million. It was insane. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
so
like dwarfed by the EPL sum. It's crazy.
I'm in a little bit of a better mood this week than I guess in past shows, and we'll maybe get to why. So Liverpool did play Leicester City, in a game I was worried about because Vardy likes scoring against Liverpool. They said he's got like 14 goals, and it's one of the two that he scored the most against.
Hmm.
Vardy really was not a factor, and we'll get to why. But Liverpool do go on to win 3-0. I do think this was maybe, I think they got lucky a little bit in some respects. But 2 goals from Curtis Jones, 2 beautiful goals from Curtis Jones, and then
Mm.
the third comes from I put down Trent Alexander, Kimmich, Kevin De Bruyne, Arnold. Because he's turned into basically two or three players in one. And it's a fantastic free kick or an exercise free kick because the ball was moving. Uh, but the game had a weird start to this, to be honest. I don't really think there was more than a shot or two between the two sides in the first 20 minutes, and it did feel like Vardy was able to get behind a few times. Allison was actually doing a really good job of being a sweeper keeper, doing a little manual maneuver, and that was able to kind of stop a little bit of that. But I do think the problem was what Dean Smith ran with. So he did a 4-2-3-1. So he did Pereira, Faze, 35-year-old Johnny Evans gets his, like, first start. So he didn't like what
Mm.
Sorancho had been doing. And then, Castagna on the other, fullback spot, and then it was Samarian and Ndidi in the middle. That made sense. So it really was kind of a back six at times because they weren't really pressing. And then the issue I think came here. So it was Madison, Tielemans, and Barnes, and then Vardy. Vardy was alone. So you had Madison and Barnes that weren't really offering a second run in behind. And so, Madison was kept trying to get the ball in the pockets and trying to look for Vardy ahead, but it was only Vardy making runs. And so it
Mm.
was really easy for Kanate and Virgil to kind of be like, "Hey, we're gonna be tight on you, and maybe you can get behind us, but you gotta have to have a perfect ball to beat Allison. Allison was sweeper keeping, and there was never really a second threat. So I think that was where the issue came from.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would definitely agree. I mean, it was a bit of a masterclass at times, but by Liverpool. And how many games have they won in a row? I think it's like seven. I think
It goes back to the Man City game. Yeah,
April 1st. Yeah, it goes all the way back to April 1st. That's crazy.
a lot of them have been
Putting together a great run. They
a lot
got a
of them have
chance, Ben. They got a
A
chance.
lot of them have been close games, but,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
we'll see. I mean, yeah, I mentioned how Man United had Bournemouth and Fulham, to get through, and I kind of, looked it over. Fulham took points from Liverpool, and Bournemouth took points from Liverpool. So,
yeah.
nothing. There's a reason you play the games and you just do a check mark before anything's happen. So we'll necessarily see. But
Yeah.
if this happens, it'll be because of that. Liverpool also dropped points to Leeds. They dropped points to a lot of teams at the bottom, in that January, February, March stretch, which it's hard to recover from that. Uh,
Yeah.
but in this one, Leicester were just bad. I mean, Tielemans as a 10 instead of Madison. Tielemans really didn't offer anything. I thought you didn't really see any kind of running, and Liverpool. It took a while for Liverpool to get going, which we've seen. We've seen that in a lot of games when Gakpo's been played up top. I think that we'll get to that. That I think is hit and miss. To be honest, now you go online, Liverpool fans love this idea. I don't necessarily. I'm not necessarily buying a ton of it. To be honest, I feel like
Mm.
if because what's happening is they're not playing Jota instead, and Gakpo actually creates one of these goals, but he creates it because Curtis Jones is in the box. He's like the de facto striker at that point. And too often, Gakpo is trying to get the ball on the turn, and he's getting the ball outside the box. He's 6'4". He should be a target. And he got the ball. The one chance he did get the ball in the box, this is one of the big chances that they missed. He either forced a save or he hit the shot out wide. And I was thinking if Darwin Núñez was in that spot, Darwin Núñez would have gotten hell online. So
Yeah, true.
there's still a little makeshifts here, but it's fitting that Curtis Jones gets the 2 goals because the main thing that Klopp's done since that City game is he's moved Trent into a different position, or since the Arsenal game, really. He moved Trent into a different position, and he started playing Curtis Jones in midfield. And what that does is that gives legs in the midfield that they haven't had. Curtis Jones has been very good at pressing and very good at working without the ball. And he's been making runs into the box that, Thiago's been hurt for a lot of this, but he was trying Henderson on the left spot. There really hasn't been an answer, at least when Thiago's been missing. And so Curtis Jones doesn't offer the passing ability that Thiago has, but what he's done is he's moved Trent into midfield, and Trent's de facto become Thiago, Mr. Reliable on the ball. And it's changed Henderson's role a little bit, where he's not necessarily the liability as much, and they're still a little bit vulnerable. We saw versus Spurs. It's changed a little Robinson. It's changed Robinson's role, which I've spoken about. But that's the reason why this has happened. It hasn't necessarily been, Gakpo coming in. Though Diego Jota did actually save Liverpool in some of these games. Save them versus Nottingham Forest. Save them versus Spurs. Uh, but the overall the ball control that they have is different. The way they're able to counter press and win the ball back is different because of Trent having a different role and because of Curtis Jones being coming in. So I think it's fitting that Curtis Jones got 2 of these goals.
Yeah, me too. He deserves a lot of credit, and he's still a young player, and he has had some ups and downs. Obviously, like any young player in the Premier League will have.
Mhm.
But yeah, these were 2 really good goals, 3 minutes back to back. It was awesome to see, and I like some of these young guys that Liverpool have, and it that part is looking good for the future at least. That they do have like Bacetic and Jones, a couple young guys that got just a ton of experience this year.
Sure, sure. There is some of that. I mean, the issue I've always been kind of surprised by is, it's sometimes that Curtis has played in midfield. He's been asked to kind of play the Thiago role, play like Thiago, and it seems what Klopp's done is he's allowed him to actually have a little bit more freedom without the ball. So he's making a little bit more runs, and what he's asking him to do is almost like what Gini Wijnaldum was kind of asked to do. Basically, counter press when run back. When Liverpool don't necessarily have it because they look so much different. And what that's doing, another thing that's doing is Fabinho looks an entirely different player. Fabinho looked amazing in this game, and it seems like he's found new legs because he's not asked to play midfield all by himself. Even with Thiago, there were issues. So yeah, there is they're linked to Lexi McAllister. They're still linked to do a midfield shift. They're not going to get Jude Bellingham, as we know. Um, so we're seeing Klopp experiment a little bit, and the reason why I'm a little bit more upbeat is I didn't think I would see this. Klopp's been stubborn the entire time he's been there.
Yeah.
Anytime anyone's asked him, "Oh, you're going to try a different formation? You're going to try to change things?" and he's like, "No." Um, and because I didn't think he was going to do this trend experiment. There 2 years ago. Gareth Southgate played Trent in midfield versus England for like 45 minutes, and Klopp was really critical of it. He was like, "Why are you playing the best fullback in the midfield? This is stupid." And the way it's really nice to see him change a little bit there. Now it helps having Kanate back. Konate is able to get out wide and close off some of that danger when it goes out wide, or that someone like I don't think Matip would be able to do. So there is some of that. The
Hmm.
Liverpool is somewhat healthy in a spot where they're able to at least adjust a little bit because we didn't see this all year. We didn't see Klopp's had midfield issues. He's had age issues where there were legs on the roster, but it was more in like the attacking players. And it seems they did bring Gakpo in the winter window, but he's changed things. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah, he really has. Yeah,
So
it's good to see because yeah, we didn't think he would.
I
You've
really
been
didn't.
saying that all
Yeah.
year too.
I mean, yeah. So the first goal just comes from in Allison long ball. Allison was incredible in this game. So he had a couple good stops. I think Leicester were like 4 for 4 in shots. So he had to make some good saves. Harvey Barnes had a shot
Mm.
that forced a good save, and he was really good at sweeper keeping. But he's also good with his distribution. I mean, this goal comes from a pinch perfect ball. By Allison, he finds Diaz, and then Wout Fez makes a mistake here. He allows it to bounce, and then Luis Diaz wins the header, and then Henderson gets the ball to Salah, and Salah does a wonderful floated ball over the top. Salah had a hat trick of assists in this game, and then Curtis Jones makes a back post run that's unmarked, and it scores a similar goal that he scored for Spurs. But really, the real reason to kind of hype him up is what happens for the second goal. So Gakpo receives the ball well and turns with it, and then he finds Salah kind of in the top of the box a little bit, and Salah one times the ball to Curtis Jones in the box. And so, and he takes a first touch and then finishes like a world class number 9. This was a stunning finish. Um, and the interesting thing here a little
Mm.
bit is Curtis Jones has played in a different role when he's played for England's U21s. He's played further up top. He hasn't necessarily played as a midfielder. So it seems he's even played as a false 9 for them. So it does feel like he's comfortable at least getting the ball in that area and finishing, and that is good to see. But Gakpo
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but Gakpo does well here. So he receives the ball but he feels like he's a 10. He's not necessarily or a central midfielder. He's not really a forward. It's kind of the same thing that I think Jesus has a little bit. And then to talk about the free kick goal that Trent scores. What's funny is Trent scored this exact or tried to score this exact free kick before in the season, and the reason why they didn't is because it basically hit Henderson standing in the way, blocking. It happened versus Crystal Palace. So that was kind of funny. Klopp even kind of talked about that. And Trent likes scoring at the King Power. He scored at the Community Shield game, and then he frankly had one of the best games of his career as a right back at that stadiums a few years back on Boxing Day. I don't know if you remember that. And then
Oh
um,
yeah, yeah, I do. Yeah,
so I mean the shots were 16 and 5, 3 big chances for Liverpool. 4 and 4 for Leicester. But the passing was 576 for Liverpool. In some of these games, Liverpool actually haven't had necessarily the best passing numbers. So they were able to rectify that here. Leicester were poor. It didn't seem like they had an idea to win the ball back or a desire to win the ball back. And when we get to Leicester, really don't understand what the idea was to bring Dean Smith in because he seems kind of clueless to me. I mean, there's still a
yeah,
chance to maybe change things, but he brought him in so late. I don't really know what he can change, to be honest. But one thing he can
yeah,
do, there's no reason if you can't just play Vardy alone. You need to play Daka or Tete. You need to have someone to make runs where people can't just focus on Vardy because it's too easy. It's too easy to play him.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And Vardy's no spring chicken either, and he's a player that relies on pace, and pace is one of the first things that goes with age. So yeah, he definitely needs some help. I mean, he hasn't played that much this year, but he did have a couple clutch goals a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I mean, playing you take a little load off him, playing him with some another striker would definitely help in my mind. But we'll see what Dean Smith decides to do.
And then for Liverpool, they have a decent run in. It's Aston Villa at home. If it was Aston Villa away, I would be really worried because Ollie Watkins has actually had a decent scoring record himself. We just saw what Vardy was able to get behind a few times. He just didn't have anyone next to him. I don't think that would be an issue with Villa. I think Villa, sometimes they've been trying Leon Bailey on the other side, and he's been having fun too. So I do think it'll be a different test for them. I am thankful that it is at Anfield because it does feel that's become a little bit more of a defense shield in recent weeks, and I am glad that Kanate is back to maybe handle some of that as well. So we'll see. It's not necessarily the easiest game there, and then after that they have Southampton. I don't know if Southampton will be trying to do something to where it's like, oh, it's our last game in the Premier League. Maybe we'll be able to show up, or if they're like, well, we'll go to the beach. But we'll necessarily see. Liverpool can win these 2 games and just kind of see if Newcastle and Man United can drop a few points here and there. I do think if one of them, it Liverpool, I think they need if Manchester United or Newcastle, I think win one of their last few games. I think that gets them to a point where Liverpool can't catch. So we'll see. Because
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
it's only a 1 point now, but they have the games in hand. So.
Yeah, that game in hand is gonna be tricky for sure.
And Liverpool. Speaking of Newcastle, Liverpool need Leicester to do something versus Newcastle. Maybe Vardy can get behind Fabian Schär because we saw Watkins do that a couple of weeks ago. But the weird thing with Leicester is I actually played our preview show, and both of us were worried about them to even start the season. And looking back,
Yeah.
to be honest, it was kind of weird that we thought that. Now we thought they were going to sell a lot more players than they did. We thought Madison was going to leave. We thought because they
Maybe
sold
Tillman's
they
would be
sold
gone.
Schmeichel, Tillemans, right? And instead, the only person they sold was Fofana. And so something that I was wondering here because they finished eighth last season, and but they were poor all the way up until like the last they it was kind of a fake. It was kind of a mirage because what they did is they won 4 of their last 5 last May to finish eighth because they were poor. They were poor up till February last season as well. But one thing I was kind of wondering is, do you think Leicester in the spot they're in now, if they had held on to Schmeichel and Fofana? Because
Ooh.
be,
Oh man.
before you answer, because what I want to say is they started the season with the worst goals conceded because Danny Ward had so many mistakes before the World Cup, and Wout Faz has come in and he
Yeah.
took a while to adjust to the league as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Schmeichel alone would get them a couple more points at least. And Schmeichel too was the captain and kind of the soul of the team. So I think if they had kept him, they would have a few more points. I think they'd still be in trouble, but they'd have a few more points and they'd probably be safe.
Four
If
points.
they kept him and Fofana, they would definitely be fine, in my opinion.
Yeah, because all it takes is 4 points. And what's funny is Fofana. I think
Mhm.
did Fofana score versus? No, Fofana scored versus Leeds. It wasn't necessarily Leicester. But yeah, 4 points would have kept them safety, and I think that's maybe where they could have. I get they had financial issues, but maybe you could have sold someone else. Sold, I don't know, Dewsbury Hall or someone. Sold Tillmans. Tillmans wanted to leave anyways.
Yeah,
Tillmans had an
yeah, that's
injury,
true.
and since he's come back, he hasn't necessarily helped them regain form. So yeah.
Yeah, the interesting question.
And then we'll move on to Chelsea and Nottingham Forest. We'll be able to move on a little bit quickly. Obviously, Liverpool always takes some time, Rex. Sorry. Uh,
No, you good, Ben.
I was expecting to not have to talk about Liverpool because I thought it was done and dusted, to be honest, after the Arsenal thing. And like you said, they'd be able to ring on a couple of these. They've been doing a late challenge. So I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, been
One
interesting. Yeah,
one
for
team that
sure.
hasn't been able to do a late challenge is Chelsea. Chelsea and Nottingham Forest. Lampard gets a point. They let Forest and Forest maybe could have had a chance to really secure their freedom. But the point still helps them. So it's 2-2. Awani and Sterling get braces, so that's kind of cool. But the thing to touch upon here is it's official that Pochettino is back in the Premiership and back with Chelsea. So I guess maybe we'll start there. I mean, what are you expecting? Was that maybe a surprise to you, or yeah, does this excite you, or maybe worry you, or what are your thoughts on here?
Oh man, I don't know. Like, I didn't watch too much of this game to be honest. So I don't know. Just
We don't have to talk about the game. Just what do you think of What do you think of Pochettino?
I mean, I like Poach. I really do. I think Tottenham letting him go was stupid, and we saw what happened. They went from being in the Champions League final to struggling for spots in the Champions League in the top four. And not only that, but they've just gone through a couple coaches that just haven't done it. So I think Pochettino will be good. I think he's just been sitting around biding his time for that right offer to come as well, which is important because it shows he had some patience and maybe this was, one of the jobs that he did have his sights on because he was linked to a bunch of other clubs. I mean, Tottenham were even linked to going back to him. So I don't know. I think it'll be a good situation for Poach. I think it's one that he was kind of patient on, and he wanted the right opportunity, the right place. Maybe also he wanted the right funds at his disposal. So yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be good, but Chelsea's just in a mess. They really are. So I don't know. It's going to take a lot to to kind of get this club going again. But he's going to have all the money in the world. You would think all the financial backing in the
That's the
world.
main thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's huge. But I mean, they're gonna have to get rid of some of these players too at the same time.
Mhm.
I mean, Azpilicueta, I don't know about him. Aubameyang will probably be gone. But you mentioned Sterling. Like Sterling's starting to come good finally. He was a big bust. Maybe they can end on a hot streak with him. Mason has been, his name has been floated around with a bunch of other clubs. I don't. It's going to be interesting, but I think Pochettino is a really, really good coach. And I think you'll see a little bit of a resurgence from Chelsea. I don't know, like they're in such a big mess. I don't know, like if they'll be challenging for the top four or just challenging for Europa. Who knows? But yeah, I think Pochettino's a good coach, and I think they got their man. But I kind of thought that with Tuchel, and I kind of thought that with what's his face from Brighton too. So
Potter.
Potter. So
Mhm.
I don't know. We'll see. It's gonna be interesting.
It is. I mean, especially yeah, he's got an interesting summer because I don't know how much they can actually spend, considering what they did in the past window. Now they do have a number of players that they could sell that I do think would have suitors. Mason Mount, you mentioned as well, and Levitt Colwell, I think would maybe have some suitors. They also have
Oh
Lukaku
yeah.
on the books. I don't know what their plan is for him. It's possible you could see him lifting the trophy for the Champions League title
Hmm.
for Inter. He's not necessarily starting for Inter, but he's come on, and when he comes on, he looks good as a sub.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily know they want to bring him back. And Gallagher is hit and miss it seems. But you're right.
Yeah.
They do have the pieces. You would imagine. Mudryk hasn't necessarily worked out. He's been a bust. I wasn't expecting, to be honest. I don't know if that was Graham Potter being absolutely amazing at Shakhtar because not Graham Potter, De Zerbi, because he was playing under
Mhm.
De Zerbi for Shakhtar. So I don't know if that is just that or what it is. Maybe a different playing style. Maybe Shakhtar were a little bit more, even though De Serbi likes having the ball and being possession minded. Maybe they're a little more transition based. I can't explain it. But Madueke has come
Yeah,
in
it's
and
weird.
looked pretty good when he's played. But you know, the thing that I'm confused about with Chelsea is even who they brought in, who they've already brought in or already pinned down and paid money for. It's Christopher and Cuckoo. And
Mhm.
that is an interesting name, but I look at where did Chelsea have a surplus of players? It's out wide. It's like these creative players that want the ball at their feet. They're not necessarily guys that want to make runs behind. Though you imagine Mudryk is one of those players, but it's clever, creative guys that want to cross the ball in. That aren't necessarily on the receiving end of a cross. Now, Nkunku scored
Right.
or helped Leipzig win a game on the weekend because of that. He got the ball out wide and did a really nice cross to someone to head it in. But you're bringing another guy in that because I don't know what they're doing with Felix. I don't know what the idea
Yeah.
with Hazard.
Great question too.
Probably would be time to get rid of
Havertz.
Havertz. Yeah. Um,
Mhm. Yeah, I think so.
so I mean, you look at the defense at least seems somewhat stable. It could maybe still improve a little bit at left back. I know Chilwell's been linked to. Weirdly, they've been linked to Man City. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. Um, I mean, Reece James is hit and miss with his injuries. Maybe after he has
Mhm.
his surgery, he'll be better. Batashili and Fofana and Koulibaly, it seems that's at least somewhat stable. Thiago Silva is going to be 38 to 39 next season, so it's probably time to move on from him. And I don't. You can maybe improve at keeper, to be honest. Mendy came in, and I thought he
Mm.
had a couple of mistakes in this game. So and Kepa,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just for some reason I just have never really believed in Kepa, but maybe the idea is just stick with Kepa and just kind of go that way. But um,
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it's Lampard kind of said it well, to be honest, and to be fair to him in his post game. So he's like they were really poor in the first half. Well, all they're doing was just doing, passing it side to side. There wasn't really any kind of threat. And what happened? That everything changed when they had an overlap run from Chalobah. So Chalobah helps do a cutback run for Sterling, and then Sterling was able to make a run behind to kind of push that back line a little bit back, and they were able to get a goal off a transition. They won the ball back, and then Sterling did a really good job of running into the box and cutting in and scoring that way. But yeah, Chelsea still weren't necessarily still at their best, to be honest. And yeah, Forest maybe are kicking themselves because they did have the goal lead. Forest did feel like the one goal was going to be enough because they had 11 shots and only two on target, 24% of the ball, and 132 passing. Chelsea had 631, but a lot of that really was toothless. I mean, Chelsea did have 14 shots and six on target. Three big chances though fell to Nottingham Forest. So it was weird. It was a weird game, and
It was a
Lampard
weird game. Yeah,
Lampard's had a weird weird career at Chelsea for a second stint because this draw at least gets him a point. I don't think they've won since like maybe early March. He did not
really.
he did not come in and have a good go of it. Yeah.
No, not at all. Yeah, not at all.
But
Well, we kind of thought that would happen too, to be
like
honest.
they beat Leicester. And I think that's the last and that was with Potter. I don't think they won with Lampard. I might
I
be
don't think
wrong.
so
I
either.
might be wrong
I
about
think they
that.
got a
I think
point. Like they tied a
they might
couple
have
of
had a
them.
draw. Well, they drew Liverpool. Um, so there we go with that. But yeah, I mean, so I think this is more about Nottingham Forest. So the point gets them to 34. Um, but if Leeds beat West Ham, that gets them to 34. So do you want to? It comes down to goal differential between those two teams, and I I don't know who would benefit there because Nottingham Forest have conceded so many goals, but so have Leeds. Leeds have probably scored more.
Yeah, yeah, true.
Um,
Yeah, they
s-
probably have, but
so
their
it
defense is
it,
just so poor.
it feels like Forest are still not out of it, and they've got Arsenal coming to the coming to try to chop down some trees. So it's still probably a scary game for you guys.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too, honestly. And because now it's kind of like, I mean, the ceiling for Arsenal is that maybe they could win, but it looks like second place is there to stay. They're not in danger of really dropping down third. Versus you're playing a Nottingham Forest team that kind of has their back against the wall and desperately needs anything they can get. They're going to kind of scratch and claw their way to maybe getting a point, maybe getting 3 points. But maybe a little bit of pressure will be off Arsenal. Now that basically the title race is basically over, maybe they'll be freed up a little bit.
Mhm.
Freed up mentally. Maybe they'll just kind of let it go and play really well. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see though, because they're not in danger of dropping to third. But they kind of lost the title too. Maybe it'll be kind of like a hangover game, so to speak, even though they weren't celebrating, but just, the mood in the locker room and around the club has to be low, considering that, they lost on Saturday and or Sunday and City won. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Well, we know you'll be without Zinchenko. We know
Yep.
you'll maybe be without Martinelli. It looks like he maybe
Hmm.
is out for the rest of the season. Um,
Yep.
and if I'm Arteta, one thing that I would definitely do, no, not to necessarily do my coaching chops, but after seeing what Forest did with Liverpool, and actually get one of their goals from Awani, getting ahead in, is I would work on defending long throw-ins, because Niakate
Oh.
is a weapon with his long throw-ins.
He is.
And
Yeah.
it's not winning the first ball, it's that second and third. And Hawani is really good at just kind of winning aerial duels. So I would definitely focus on that. That
And
seems to
he's
be
starting
their
to heat up
that seems to
too.
be their threat. Morgan Gibbs White has been the interesting thing in this game was they didn't play Bennett Johnson. But Morgan Gibbs
Hmm.
White has been a threat for them as has Danilo, and I think Gibbs White maybe is a former Arsenal player, so he might have something to prove as well. Um, but
Yeah.
at least Arsenal will just have to put pressure on City where they go into this Chelsea game. Chelsea just hired a new manager, technically. I don't know if it's a new manager bump, but Sterling maybe is going to go into this game thinking this is his Champions League final. This is maybe Chelsea's Champions League final. Alex
Yeah.
even said, if Chelsea can win this game, maybe that's a successful season, or they can look at it that way. So this is not necessarily going to be the easiest game. So we'll see if Chelsea can give City a fight, and Who knows? Maybe we'll have something to talk about next week because hopefully it won't be done and dusted. That'll be kind of boring. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Completely agree. Yeah, hopefully we'll go down to like the last remainder of the season. The last day. Hopefully, that's like the dream. But for relegation, it certainly looks like it's going to come down to the last day for one or two teams. So, we at least have that going for us too. That's what we love about the Premier League. Is you're always going to have storylines on the last day, whether it be you know getting into the Champions League spots, winning the title, or just staying in and not getting relegated. It's always fun.
I mean, I feel like we were spoiled last year. Not just as a
Yeah.
Liverpool fan. I mean, just the city and Liverpool thing where everything was decided in the last like 15 minutes. It wasn't even like at halftime. Everything was kind of still in the balance. And I think was relegation already tied up at that point? I feel like someone no, it
Can't
wasn't.
remember.
Leeds and
It wasn't.
Brentford went into a big game, and Everton, someone beat Burnley, where Burnley had a chance, and Everton were able to escape that way. I remember that. Leeds maybe like advanced over like goal differential. It was that close. Um,
Yeah. I think you're right. Crazy.
so we'll move on to Aston Villa and Spurs. This one ends 2-1. I actually watched this game live. Riley and Andrew were in town, and this wasn't necessarily the best game, to be honest.
True.
There's an interesting stat though. Spurs were a little bit more of a threat than the stats necessarily showed. I think they only had like 8 shots all game. They
Mhm.
were offside 9 times. They could not find a way to stay on sides. And so Villa get the first goal with Jacob Ramsey, and so to move on to what happens there, it's just kind of Watkins like backheeling a ball to Ramsey, who runs behind him. So this starts basically with Ramsey kind of starting with the entire movement at his feet. He gets the ball to Liam Bailey, and then Bailey does a really good job to create a little space. Ben Davies doesn't get close enough. It gets a cross off, and then it's a low cross. That finds Jacob Ramsey kind of just making a run into the box, and he puts it away in the corner, and it's a really good finish. But after that, it was just a who's who of being offside. So it started with Richarlison making a couple runs to get in behind Villa's back line because Villa were playing a crazy back line, almost like standing at like the halfway line, and they just could not time this properly. There was a chance when Son got behind brilliantly after a brilliant ball by Kane. Kane
Mhm.
was not interested at all at doing anything other than being the supply man, in this game, and he had a couple really good balls, to Son, but Son wasn't able to time his run properly. There was a chance where, there was a giveaway, I think, where Spurs actually forced a bad pass, and Kane got the ball into the box, but he couldn't beat Martinez. Martinez, he didn't have a lot to do, but he was big here. He had a really good save on Kane, and it was really the one time when Spurs were able to get Kane the ball in the box. But
Mhm.
a lot of
Absolutely.
this game was just Son and Richarlison just kind of not being able to time their runs properly. They kept trying to get over this high line. They weren't able to time it. And then Kulishevsky came on, so they offered a little bit different, a different look, and he at least made things a little bit interesting. Uh, the way the Spurs were able to get back in the game was Harry Kane was able to draw PK. But it was in like the 90th minute, and then before that, Villa gets the second goal because Douglas Luiz has a really good free kick. Um, so this is a little further out than what Gunnigan did, but Foster does get a hand to it, so maybe there's a chance here. But this is a very very nice free kick, and it's kind of fitting because Douglas Luiz kind of had the bad pass that Harry Kane almost scored on, so he was
Mhm.
able to make up for that and then some. And then at the very end, it almost felt like Spurs had tied the game at the last minute. Son again got behind and then was able to get the finish right. And then it went to VAR and it looked like he was offsides, and that was really the story of the game, I thought.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And I mean, it looks like Villa's pretty humming along pretty well. I
Yeah,
don't know if they'll.
I wanted Spurs to beat Villa because they still have a chance for Europe, and so that means they're going to try really hard
Uh,
this coming week versus Liverpool. Unfortunately.
yeah, yeah, that's going to be a good game because they're hanging around in eighth and they have as many points as Tottenham, and they're only a few points down of that sixth place spot. But I don't know. Liverpool at 65. That's 8 points, so they theoretically can't catch them, right?
No, 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 no,
With
no, no.
only
It wouldn't
two games
be
left.
well, I'm confused. They're because Chris Brighton's trying to Emery wants a Europa spot or a conference league. He wants a Europe spot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So
uh,
6th or 7th,
yeah,
5th, 6th or 7th. Yeah,
yeah, I think Liverpool have almost secured fifth, to be honest,
I think so. At least, yeah, at least because let me see.
because
Yeah, yeah, they definitely have.
because
Brighton's at 58. So
Brighton had a chance, but they lost to Everton. That's what took them off course. Um,
yeah, 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 definitely.
I mean, the interesting thing here, and I kind of want to get this out with you, is to me, it's the same theme I think with Spurs the entire year. And the thing that's weird is, people thought maybe this was just a Conte thing, but then Conte left, and then that Stinetti guy, who's like Conte's like second guy in charge, so you'd understand maybe that's the reason why they were doing the same thing. Same thing with him,
Mhm.
and then Ryan Mason comes in, and no, it's the same theme. It's they sit back and are weak in the first half and then show up and give it a go and try to press and try to do play a little bit more, threatening stuff in the second half. But by that time you're playing down a goal and it changes how the other team's able to play. And it's just weird. I mean, Tottenham had 5 shots, so I was wrong on that, and only 2 on target, but they were offsides 9 times. But
Mm.
and Villa didn't necessarily, have the best of it either. 8 shots and 4. It wasn't really the cleanest game from either team. But yeah, to focus on Spurs, it's just weird. I mean, the high line you can talk, I guess, with both teams, but they it just felt it just felt they were just flat and out of ideas. And then again they wake up and gave it a go in the second half, but Um, it almost feels like it is done on purpose. So the only thing I can think of is they're trying to conserve energy, to give it a go in that second half. But I don't think that's necessarily how football works. How you can just like all of a sudden turn things on again. But the other thing that shows up is we've spoken about the lack of defensive quality all month. They're so poor in midfield that it's an issue as well. Where Harry Kane, I think, is being asked to do 2 or 3 jobs all in one, where you're not getting the best out of him. And even that's crazy to say because Harry Kane has been absolutely incredible with the amount of goals and assists he's been able to do. But in this game, he was a midfielder. He wasn't just playing like a false nine and dropping deep to link a play. No, he was actually looking to get the ball in the turn, and then to immediately get it upfield to Son or Richarlison. He wasn't necessarily looking to just kind of get the ball up and follow up and be a number in the box. He was staying back just in case they lost the ball. It was weird.
Yeah, it really was weird. I don't know. Do you think he did that on his own, or was it like coach's instruction?
It could be Kane just deciding to do it on his own. There could be some of that, but yeah, I mean, Oliver Skip and Hoiberg just that's who they're playing in midfield. Uh, it seems like they have 2 passes in mind, and that's it. No one's Harry Kane actually did a really good job to get the ball and do a little turn because Villa were trying to press and trying to win the ball back, and just Oliver Skip and anytime they get the ball, they want to out of their feet as quickly as possible. Usually go inside or backwards. And that's where they seriously need to improve. To be honest, even someone like Ward Prowse coming in would improve. I think that midfield. I don't know if they're necessarily looking at that, but they need to do something. Maybe if Leicester go down, maybe I would try for Madison. Madison would maybe help out a little bit there.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
so we'll see.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, maybe Madison could help. Interesting.
Um, and with Villa playing because they did this high line versus Man United, I didn't think it worked out versus Man United. I thought, yeah, they've been able to get so many teams off sides, and with the way that it's kind of Liverpool did this last year, the way that VAR is set up, it almost helps you to play the super high line because you have to time it to an inch perfection. Because anything off, it is going to be offsides, and they have gotten a number of teams offsides by playing this super crazy high line. But I think if you please do this with Salah, Diaz, and maybe Gakpo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it 1v1 with Tyrone Mings, I would like Liverpool to benefit in that situation as opposed to sitting back and trying to counter because that's when Liverpool
Yeah.
get into fits when they have to break teams down sometimes.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And playing that high line against them would be incredibly dangerous. Incredibly dangerous.
and so we'll maybe get on to a low key one of the more fun games that happened on maybe the fun game that happened for you on Sunday. It happened. It was like the third game that's in everyone's mind because it didn't really matter to West Ham, but it was big. I thought so. Brentford did go on to beat West Ham 2-0. But the thing that I thought was interesting here is both teams reshuffled their squad, so you saw maybe a glimpse of the future for both teams. So no Declan Rice, no Bowen. for West Ham. I don't necessarily know if Bowen's going to leave, but we do think Declan Rice is going to leave. And then with Brentford, Brentford had to play without Ivan Toney, I think, for a hamstring injury. And we saw
Yeah,
what Brentford
hamstring.
can be without Toney. And maybe it was just they were playing a weakened West Ham side. But Rex, they had 24 shots and 10 on target, six big chances. For Brentford. Brentford very good.
Yeah, they really were. Mbumo and Visa were kind of carrying the team, and it's fun. It's fun to see Mbumo kind of, he's a good creator, but it was fun to see him kind of take over and score, and
Mhm.
that's what they need. They need players scoring other than Tony, because you can't just rely on Tony the whole time. Obviously because of injuries, but in the future, maybe suspension too. So, and Shada was given a starting job too. Maybe he's someone that can kind of fill in during that suspension, or maybe they're going to bring in someone we don't really know. But yeah, it was good to see just other people step up besides Tony in the scoring department.
Well, I don't know if Brentford. I brought this name up with you. I don't know if Brentford are necessarily looking this way as well. Obviously they're probably going to have some kind of plan for Tony. Because either they sell him or like you said they're going to be he's going to be suspended. Uh,
Mhm.
they might be rooting for. I don't know who Coventry is playing, but you don't want Coventry to be in the EPL, because maybe you can get a shot at Gigresh. Um, so we'll
Mhm.
necessarily see if that happens. I mean, the player that I really want to touch on is Damsgaard. I thought for the first
Mm.
time we really saw it was probably I think his best performance. I thought he looked more physical. I thought he actually for one of the goals he actually does well to win the ball back. But even one of the first chances that happens is like a shot across into the box that finds Damgard making a run, good run into the box, and he gets a good jump on him, and he's trying to beat the keeper, and he gets good contact, and the ball just kind of sails out wide. But you saw him being way more involved than I think we've seen all season. And so I think that's maybe something to be positive about going forward as well, because I've been worried about him to be honest. But he looked really
Oh
good this
yeah, me
game.
too.
Mhm.
Yeah, he looked great. He looked really good. So yeah, that's something maybe to build off of.
'Cause I don't I'll just go over we'll go over the goals. I don't necessarily have to go over the chances, but, I mean, the first goal comes from Weiser kinda pressing a guard into making a bad decision, and then Damsgaard does well to immediately break on the ball, win it back, and then it quickly finds, Yenalt's feet, and then Yenalt finds Jensen, and then Jensen does a good job to pass it to Mbeumo, and it's a good finish, by Mbeumo, but this happens because of Damsgaard here. And like I mentioned, he was a little bit more involved. I thought, and then Wesa had a chance. So and Bremo gets the ball on the touchline, and he finds Damsgaard in a pocket, and Damsgaard immediately sees Hickey making a run, forward run, and so Damsgaard quickly passes it to Hickey's feet, and then from there Brentford created a chance with Wisa, who's able to get a shot off. It's saved by Fabianski, and it's a good save, but it's another good play by
Mhm.
Damsgaard here. And then Wisa before halftime nearly drew a PK. After there was a little pinball and there was a long throw in, and the reason to touch on that, is Brentford later score because of a long throw in. So I
That's
forget
right.
I forget who actually threw it in, but they seem to have this kind of a threat with them too. And Brand Mee wins the first header, and then flicks it towards goal, and that's where Weissa gets the second touch. Um, and that's where the 2 goals came, and then from there, it was kind of a it was what number did Brentford want? I mean, there was another poor giveaway by West Ham, I think by Souček, and Bremer kind of plays Weiser the ball in the box, and he has a poor shot. This was one of the poor, the one maybe negatives. Weiser being played in a different spot, he didn't get a lot of chances, but he didn't necessarily put nearly as many away as he should have. And then Damsgaard nearly scored after a Brentford corner kick where the ball kind of flicked to the back post where Damsgaard just couldn't keep the shot down. And there was a chance for maybe West Ham to make it interesting, to make it 2-1, but it's chalked off for a handball. And to be honest, I thought this
Right.
was harsh. A youngster in Bremer has come on. He's trying to head the ball after the ball is crossed in, and he has his hand to prevent basically clattering into the post, and the ball kind of just touches the hand. So I understand it, but I do feel like it's harsh for the guy because he
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily score it. Ings does after the ball kind of falls to him. So that was maybe a chance for West Ham to get back in it, but it really wasn't that competitive to be honest. West Ham
Mhm.
did have 4
Yeah.
shots, 4 on target. Brentford had a number of chances and uh, decent passing. They outpossessed West Ham. Some of that is West Ham doesn't really care about having the ball, but I thought, like I mentioned, it was life without Tony and life without Declan Rice, and one team benefited more than the other. I thought.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, West Ham did have that goal chalked off, but yeah, like you said, other than that, they weren't really at the races. So it was good. It was good for Brentford to see. They've had their highest finish in the top division in like 83 years or something like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's been a great season, and I'm just hoping they could continue in the season on this good run of form.
And, to touch on the front three, Shada looked like he enjoyed having a little bit more of a rider role, and Bremer, like you mentioned, was creating, and Weiss, I thought did look comfortable, getting the ball, in the box and looking comfortable as a 9. Just that, maybe could do better with his finishing, but maybe that comes with more reps,
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
to be honest. Yeah, and 24 shots, 10 on target. Weak West Ham or not, that is definitely something to be positive about and build on. I think
Yeah,
it was maybe the best, at least offensive performance I think of the season. And to do it without Tony, I think it was surprising. And then West Ham were able to beat AZ something. I don't actually know the name of it. In the Dutch league for the conference game. So they were able to. So
yeah.
they have to go into Holland, or into the Netherlands. Uh, they only carry a 1-goal lead, so that's the reason why they rested Declan Rice, rested Jared Bowen. So there's there's a little bit of that, but just in general, they were just incredibly poor on the ball. And Yeah, David Moyes has done a good job to, I think, keep them up this season. It's boss. I think he's even mentioned that he thinks Declan Rice is going to be on the way out. And maybe Skamaka has been hurt all year. Maybe Skamaka and Cornet can be a little bit more helpful in their attack next year. But I think they're going to have to get this recruitment done well as well. They've got a big summer ahead as well, because if they don't, and I mentioned Wolves, I think West Ham would probably be a team that I would probably pencil for another rough season, to be honest. And I don't really know
Ooh,
what the idea is to stick with Moyes or not, because they're just so bad on the ball. And it can't just be Declan Rice. Maybe he has tired legs. You're gonna need to, even if you keep him, you're gonna need to find a way to play some games without him. I just
oh,
Suchek.
absolutely.
Some of these were Brentford's best chances were just really bad giveaways, by Suchek and a guard. So they need to find a way to improve there, and probably a keeper.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, probably a keeper too. Maybe a little bit of well, they have Skamaka, but just you can't rely on Antonio and Bowen for your goals all the time.
No.
A little bit more from Ben Rama, bring in some other people. I don't know.
And we'll move on to Crystal Palace and Bournemouth. Really, the game didn't necessarily matter to either team. But the 2 goals come from Eze, two really good goals. And the only thing I was thinking about here is why was Patrick Vieira not playing him? Because he's come in.
Yeah,
I don't know how many
absolutely.
goals he's scored since, or goal involvements he's had since Roy Hodgson has come in. But it's not an insignificant number, I would say.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
had some clutch goals too.
And, I mentioned last week how I thought, a number of these clubs had made a mistake, switching out their manager really, towards the end of the year. And, the flip side of that is Crystal Palace has brought in Roy Hodgson, 70-year-old Roy Hodgson, and it has worked out spectacularly, because we did feel like
Yeah,
they were going to be in this, at the start of March or start of April, and no, they've gone on a really good stretch where they've been able to play themselves out of
yeah, absolutely.
it.
10 goals and 3 assists for Eze for the whole
Wow.
year. I'm looking into since Hodgson took over, but yeah, to be able to reach double digits in goals is huge. Especially he had that massive Achilles injury a couple years ago, so it's good to see him come back too. Because that was a tough injury.
It just feels like, I mean, they maybe have some issues, I guess, keeping the ball sometimes, even though the passing numbers, I think, is some of the best they've had all year. You bring midfield pairing of Will Hughes and Decore worked out pretty well. I don't know if they'll stick with that, but that front four works really well together. Elise likes getting the ball. He's clever at beating defenders, but he's not necessarily someone that looks to necessarily dribble or shoot. He looks to try to create. He has a good cross on him, And Eze seems to be like a clever number 10 kind of player. He used to be kind of a winger, but like you mentioned with the Achilles, maybe doesn't have that kind of speed. He can still get by players. He has a good
Mhm.
finish on him. And then Zaha is really underrated when it comes to creating 1v1s. And then
Mhm.
Ayu, I guess, does some of the defensive work that maybe Edward or someone else doesn't necessarily do. So you're not. I think in the beginning, Eze, Elise, and Zaha was too offensive minded, and they weren't working without the ball, and maybe that's what Vieira saw. But maybe Hodson's come in, and the change has been to
Maybe,
play
yeah.
Andre Ayu, and Andre Ayu is doing that defense, some of that defensive work to help out there. But I watch, at least watching the highlights here. I thought they did well to work without the ball. So and nothing else, Hodson has come on and has changed things up a little bit. To be fair to him, and it is egg on my face because I did feel like this was a hail mary, and I did not think it was going to work out. But it has.
Yeah, we just thought he was too old. Eze has 6 goals, 6 of his 10 since Hodgson took over.
Stunning.
So
Well, there
yeah,
we go.
credit
That,
Hodgson for that turn too. Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah. And let's see. Yeah, I mean 17 and 5. I want to get to the passing. 508 17 passing. With 86% possession. Now, Bournemouth weren't necessarily great. To be fair, I don't necessarily want to say it's beach season for them. But they started a player that I think had gotten his debut all season in Zabarneri, someone they got in from Dynamo Kiev. So
Hmm.
something for the future, but I didn't necessarily help them out in this game. So um, let's see, and I
Yeah,
guess
yeah,
maybe one thing to touch about here is when it was 0-0, something weird did happen with Bournemouth. So let's see. Anderson basically punches Lerma in the face, and it broke Lerma's nose. And it's in the box. So it was VAR, I guess, looked at it and they couldn't determine to do anything. At minimum, I think it's a PK. It's maybe a red card. So I'm kind of surprised that wasn't caught by VAR. So there's maybe some unjust a little bit for Bournemouth. I don't think it doesn't matter because I think they're on 39 points, but there's some of that. But I don't know. One question I have for you is, if you're the Crystal Palace manager, what do you do with Roy Hodgson?
yeah. I don't know. I think I don't think you can have him for a full season. I
Yeah.
think I would try to get someone else, and if you can't, he's not a terrible option to stay with. But I would try to get another coach. I just think this is kind of a stopgap and just like a keep us in the Prem kind of Hail Mary thing that ended up working out. I mean, you could go with him maybe, but I would certainly try to find another coach, and maybe Hodgson can be like your safety kind of guy if you can't find anyone that you're really excited about.
I mean, Zaha's contract's running down, I think finally, and I don't know if they're finally gonna move, if
Mhm.
he's gonna maybe want to finally move on, but if they can keep Hodgson, I mean, if they can keep Zaha, this Palace team, to me, is attractive, with the creating,
Absolutely.
with the SA and Olise, as well. You could maybe kind of improve a little bit in midfield, you could say, but this team to me seems like they would be good enough to stay up. So
Yeah.
if you are trying to recruit someone to come in, uh, this does feel like a at least a little bit more promising job than some of the others, I would say.
I think
So
so, definitely, definitely. And you got some pretty good attacking talent to work with, and you got some good defenders too. I mean, Gahey and Anderson have been good. So
and then we'll move on to our final game with Fulham and Southampton. Southampton winning this game, thinking they had to win to stay up, and they maybe semi gave it a go. There was a chance where it seemed like they had gotten the first goal with Alcaraz, but it was offsides. Carlos Vinicius scored a little bit after that, and then Mitrovic came on as a sub and scored right after that. The thing I want to touch on here is there was a chance by Onachu. So Walker Peters had a really good cross into the box, and Paulo Nacho outjumps everyone to win the header and can't keep the effort low enough for it to be a threat. And just immediately following, Harry Wilson had a cross, and it was behind Mitrovic. And he still gets in position to head it in. And this is basically Mitrovic does what Paulo Nacho wasn't able to do. And it, this is why it matters. It's just Southampton haven't had that kind of striker the entire season. Che Adams wasn't able to play, so you had to try Paulo Nacho in, who they brought in in February, and he just hasn't worked. And unfortunately, I
Yeah.
mean, this is another team when you look at, they're obviously they're holes, but Walker Peters, Bella Kotchap, Ward-Prowse, Lavia, even Alcaraz are names that you
Yeah.
think some people are going to try to maybe take off Southampton. So
Yeah. Maybe Bednarik too. Yeah. Who knows? But yeah, they have some good players for sure.
and it is kind of unfortunate that Southampton do go down with Walcott being there. I was kind of hoping that would kind of be a cool story if he was able to keep them up. But yeah, I mean, what's funny thing here, before maybe close it out is, Andrew was visiting, and one thing he said to me is he was just really annoyed how Southampton decided to completely peter out after the Arsenal game. He was like,
Oh,
"Well,
yeah.
if they didn't find new form to stay up, why couldn't they do that before the Arsenal game? Because like they
True.
looked really good that game, and then maybe because Arsenal were able to just kind of give it a draw, they closed it up after that. Maybe if they had actually gone on to win that game, maybe they do get a new leaf. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah. Who knows?
I mean, they didn't. They were without a manager the entire season. Bringing in Nathan Jones was an absolute flop, and not only is it a
Yeah.
flop, with regarding Southampton, Luton Town, Nathan Jones was managing. I think have advanced to the playoffs. So Luton Town didn't
Hmm.
necessarily miss
They have.
Nathan Jones either. So
Yeah. They have a chance to be in the Premier League.
mhm.
Interesting.
And, yeah, I mean, there was a chance for Southampton to get out of this. There was a chance to even get, I think, either out of, 'cause they were in the bottom spot the entire pretty much the entire way after, like, February. There it was after they beaten Spurs, I think they played West Ham, and then they lost, like, 1-0 to them, and, I think they only lost to Bournemouth 1-0 as well, and that was the opportunity to maybe get out of this, and they just didn't take it, and,
Yeah.
they only had 5 shots and 1 on target in the game they had to win, 36% of the ball. Fulham outclassed them, and, this was
Absolutely.
Fulham, or it's fitting that Fulham have outclassed them, and Fulham are basically replacing them because Fulham were a promoted side last year, and this is what you needed to beat to stay in the league, and you just weren't even close.
No. Yeah. And Fulham's had a great year too. Marcus Silva's just done a great job. So yeah, they're a tough team to beat, but Southampton just really didn't have anything to offer in attack in this one at all.
And, the funny thing is, we mentioned how a couple teams don't necessarily they haven't had anything to play for the last couple of weeks. They've been doing thinking about the beach or making jokes about that.
Yep.
Um, Fulham should have been one of those teams, especially after what happened with the FA Cup. Being without Mitrovic, and what's happened is Tosin, Harry Wilson, Tom Carney, and Vinicius have gotten an opportunity to play. Maybe they haven't had this season. Pereira's injury helped with Tom Carney, and they've really they've stepped up. They haven't been thinking about the beach. They've been thinking about a way to prove themselves.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
there are two ways to look at this. Uh, Maybe that's something that some of the someone on Wolves maybe they should do. They try to see what else they have on the bench as opposed to just trying Diego Costa. But anyways,
Yeah. Yeah. That could work. I mean, who knows?
and to end on with Southampton, I did mention how I was sad to see them go last week, and I think I couldn't really put it to words why. Liverpool have gotten Adam Lallana, Sadio Mane, and Virgil van Dijk from this club. I think they also poached, Ricky Lambert, but that didn't necessarily work out. But for a little bit, Southampton was like Liverpool's feeder club.
That's right.
And, it is kind of unfortunate because, Sadio Mane and Virgil van Dijk, specifically, you think about what they could have done if they been able to, hold on to those kind of players, and this is kind of the negative, side, to that, so
Yeah. Yeah. Good point, Ben. Yeah.
Yep.
Really
Uh,
good point.
they also lost, Danny Ings, were never really able to replace him, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. They
sad.
couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sad to see him go, but with those parachute payments from the Premier League, they have a
Sure.
really good chance to be back after a year. But yeah, I mean, if they do come back, it'll be a different team. You're not gonna have Krause and a bunch of other guys. So yeah, it is kind of sad. Ben, I've been a staple in the Premier League for how long? Like 10 years now. I feel like it's been a while.
It has been a while. Yeah, I can't go back that long.
I can't remember. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have no idea.
'cause, Arsenal got Walcott from Southampton, or did they get, Alexander or did they get Oxlade-Chamberlain from Southampton?
Yeah, yeah, both. Yeah, so kind of a feeder club for Arsenal for a little bit too.
Yeah. which makes sense, but I think it's based in London. So, anyways, I guess that's our show. Do you got anything left to say?
No, man. Just looking forward to two weeks left. That's it. Looking forward to the relegation battle and battle for the top four. Maybe the title battle, but I kind of think that's over. But
Mm.
yeah, it's been fun. It's been a good year. The relegation battle is the one that gets me the most excited. I think just because how tight it is, and every game is so important, even just a point. So that's what I'm looking forward to in these last.
Especially, yeah, if West Ham can beat, well, this gets a lot less interesting if West Ham or if Leeds don't beat West Ham. But if Leeds beat West Ham
Yeah.
and get to 34, that's where Nottingham Forest already are as well, and that forces Everton's hand and Leicester's hand definitely. So
But yeah, yeah, it could
that
be crazy.
that's where we need to see that result. And from my perspective, we need to see we need to see Chelsea do something that they haven't done for like 2 months. We'll see if they know how to win a game even. But I'm kind of
Yeah,
with you. I'm
yeah, we'll
hoping
see.
I'm hoping that we have something to talk about next week, other than a Man City parade for not just beating Chelsea. If they could have a parade for beating Real Madrid today. We'll see how that works
Yeah,
out.
absolutely.
And then if that happens, you can join me in all this finding a way to get Man City in trouble for this illegal money laundering scheme that they've been able to pull off. Well,
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
we'll see. Anyways, I guess that's it. That's all I have to talk about as well. And so for us to at the reserve squad, you stay squatty
Stay squatty. Thanks for listening, everyone.
and stop recording.